is passed, we have to get on with education to raise national security awareness in the community so that people get a good sense of the bill. And then we can comprehensively promote the concept so that people can work together in safeguarding our country's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and development interests. I so submit, President. Ms. Eunice Young. President, I speak in support of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Getting this bill through is our constitutional duty. Since 1997, we have yet to fulfill this duty. Keeping our country safe is the duty of every Chinese Hong Kong citizen. We're now finally at the last mile of the work. We will get this bill through soon. I'm very pleased. I'm very honored to be part of this process. I thank the government's work on this bill so that we can have a bill to keep our country safe and also ensure our long-term prosperity, and then we can deliver a better life for people. The point of this bill is to protect Hong Kong and keep Hong Kong's status and also maintain exchanges with the overseas community. Our rule of law is our source of pride. 2019 saw the black-clad riots that crippled our development and that hurt our rule of law, and that also eroded freedoms and human rights. So to target those actions, we now have this bill. There are offenses on insurrection, incitement to disaffection, and espionage. We can target criminals, and this can help protect the right of law-abiding citizens. This way, people can continue to enjoy the rights and freedoms under the basic law. On our international status, we have a good business environment. We have businesses from everywhere here, and that cements our status as an international financial center. This bill can remove uncertainties. For example, the bill offers clear safeguards and so that we can better protect the freedom of information, etc. We will also be able to deal with criminals spreading false news, and that can reassure investors. So the bill is good for our business investment environment. The bill will play a key part in helping us with our socio-economic development. This bill also brings us into line with other countries. Other countries have their own national security laws. This shows the importance of national security. We are following international practice. I'm also pleased to see that the government has introduced amendments after learning from overseas experience and also making sure the law works for our local conditions. Our bill offers clearer definitions. We clarify where the line is drawn, how we can catch the criminals, and how to protect people from being inadvertently breaching the law. All in all, the Safeguarding National Security Bill can better protect people's rights, freedoms, and property. This can foster social stability and create a better business environment in the future. Hong Kong should reap the benefits of this bill and focus on developing the economy, deliver a better life for people, integrate into our country's development, focus on the GBA development, so that we can keep creating stronger impetus for growth, and then we can move forward with our country as so submit.
Mr. Scottler. Thank you, President. Safeguarding national security is the duty and mission of every citizen. It is the cornerstone of societal development. The early passage of Article 23, plugging the national security loophole, can ensure that Hong Kong's prosperity can be maintained. One country, two systems can be a success, and also we can focus our energy on improving livelihood and economy. 27 years after reunification with the country, based on a number of reasons, Article 23 was not enacted, especially after the failure of the 2003 efforts. We left a loophole for external forces and criminals to exploit. Now, during 2019, in the riots, rioters engaged in wanton vandalism in the streets and at government buildings. Everyone was living in fear. we were in fear that we would be beaten up simply because we uttered the wrong word. There was no rule of law. After the chaos, we appreciate the importance of national security, and we learned with first-hand experience that without national security, we can't live a normal life, not to mention improving livelihood and economy. That's why everyone looks forward to the passage of the bill so as to plug the national security loophole and better safeguard people's liberty and rights. To safeguard national security and uphold the interests of our nationals, many countries have their own national security laws. Many Western countries have similar laws and enforcement mechanisms. The Safeguard National Security Ordinance has made reference to other jurisdictions' experience without simply copying the laws. The government has considered Hong Kong's realistic situation in drafting the provisions. The legislature has scrutinized the bill in a highly efficient manner. Compared with the US, the UK, and other countries' national security law, ours is mild and comprehensive. The government has conducted a dozen of consultation sessions, receiving some 13,000 written submissions. It showed how comprehensive the consultation exercise was. An overwhelming 98% of the views supported the bill with positive suggestions made. It shows that the bill is supported by the public. As a council member, since the beginning of the consultation period, in my constituencies, in my ward offices in Sham Shui Po and Yau Shim Mong, we have created a display board for showcasing the contents of the bill. We have also reached out to the community and explained the contents of the bill to them to promote sensible and constructive discussion. Our efforts was well received by the community. Article 23 legislation is definitely supported by everyone in Hong Kong, genuinely. I look forward to seeing the government stepping up publicity campaign after passage of the bill to enhance the understanding of national security legislation among the public. We need to understand the importance and objectives of the law. We also need to educate the public on the legal matters so that they can better exercise their rights and fulfill their obligations. Now, the geopolitical situation is treachery. We are facing ceaseless, endless national security risk. We need to pass the bill as soon as possible. I'm proud that I can participate in the work and the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill in the capacity of a council member. After the passage of the bill, we will be able to effectively suppress and prevent and punish acts endangering national security. We can finally do away with our worries and focus our energy on development and the economy. Thank you. Ms. Nixie Lam.
Security has always been the top priority of any country. And it's hard to believe the very bill written in the Basic Law has been absent for nearly 27 years. Much as an international city we are, Hong Kong has been sadly also an international political battlefield. For 27 years, we witnessed these ill-intentioned politicians from all over the world riding on our national security law to gain their little brownie points for their election campaign, or simply just want to show how tough of a man they are. David Cameron, for instance, were urging Hong Kong to reconsider having our own national security law, where they have been imposing similar, if not tougher laws in 2023, 2019, 2015, 2011, and 2008. And we are talking about a full legislation there, while we in Hong Kong has only a baby version covering secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion enacted back in 2020 to an emergency pause to order chaos in town. What is even worse are those shameless American politicians urging to sanction our prosecutors and judges, turning a blind eye on the horrendous violence attack back in 2019 and embrace those terrorists as freedom fighters. and a fragmented city, a beautiful scene to behold. But it has all comes to an end. I'm glad to stand here to be part of this historical moment and be one of the legislature to cast my vote to support the enactment of the Safeguarding National Security Bill today. It's definitely not easy, but we are finally here. The long overdue ordinance covers the basic needs of the city, that is to ensure a safe environment for the people in the city to build a career, to pursue the studies, and to settle down here and have a family at the place we all called home. With 98.6% of the public support to plug in the national security loopholes, I believe Hong Kong will continue to thrive as an economic engine of the region, simply because the people of this piece of land cherish this hard-earned peace. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the Safeguarding National Security Bill.
Mr. Peter Shiu. President, I and the Liberal Party that I represent staunchly support the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill so as to fulfill our obligation under Article 23 of the Basic Law, the 528 decision, and the Hong Kong NSL. This is our obligation. We need to plug potential national security loopholes. Since the legislative procedure began, I already stated my full support. This is our obligation. This is our constitutional duty. Early passage of the law can plug the loophole and put a full stop to this long overdue exercise. It is also closely related to our welfare and development. Now, in 2019, during the Black Lives violence, anti-China destabilizing elements colluded with external forces and mounted a Hong Kong color revolution. Many places were vandalized, shops were destroyed, innocent people were beaten up. At the time, the living environments and the business environments were both damaged. People were angry, but they dared not voice up. Now, after the Hong Kong national security law comes into place and the staunch enforcement of the police force, we returned to stability and industries resumed operation. Our life and property was once again protected. Since then, we understand that without national security, the society will be unstable. Citizens and business people cannot pursue a life and career in Hong Kong. Now, some say that the Article 23 legislation would instill anxiety among foreign investors and impede on our business environment. Many of these remarks were made by anti-China destabilizing elements who smeared our efforts. There is another possibility. Some don't understand the contents of the bill and were misled by Western politicians. In fact, national security and stability in society are the major factors considered by businessmen. From the lesson learned in 2019, without stability and safety, talents and capitals will flee. At present, our competitiveness still ranks among the top in the world. We have a lot of startups. It shows that safeguarding national security and stability in society have a positive effect on the business environment. Now, the retail and wholesale sector that I represent, and also the 104 chambers of commerce in Hong Kong, have made a public announcement on local newspaper, a full-page announcement, stating our support for the legislation. In our opinion, only with national security can we ensure stability and development opportunities in Hong Kong. I have to emphasize that the law only targets a minority of people who seek to endanger national security, but not the general public. Law-abiding citizens will not be caught unwittingly. Hong Kong is a society with rule of law. As long as you do not engage in national security, Chinese and foreign enterprises who operate within the remits of the law will not be affected at all. human rights and freedom and liberties will enjoy the safeguards offered by the law. The law also protects the legal rights enjoyed by corporations and individuals, especially in the preamble. It states that upholding the legal rights enjoyed by individuals and businessmen, and also ensuring that properties and assets are protected in the law as well, in the law, and also the prosperity of Hong Kong is the overarching principle of the law. So this is a reassurance for everyone. We don't have to overly worry. As long as we have the safety net, we can focus our efforts on improving livelihood and economic development. I support the bill. Thank you.
Dr. Tan Yueheng. Thank you, President. I speak to give my resolute support to the Safeguarding National Security Bill. This legislative exercise will be completed as soon as possible to let the Hong Kong SL government fulfill the constitutional duty and safeguard national security. Article 23 legislation can help raise our status as an international financial center. Stability is core to an international financial center. Article 23 legislation can help address the uncertainties in the business and investment environment and to create a more stable environment for people's livelihood and to protect investments and assets and properties so that Hong Kong can give play to its advantage as a super connector and to enhance our status as an international financial center. In the preamble of the bill, certain principles are set out. One country, two principles, one country, two systems principle is the overarching principle. There is also safeguard to protect rights and freedoms enshrined in the basic law. There is a balance between national development as well as safeguarding human rights and freedoms. Well, this bill contains over 200 pages. Now, many of the provisions can be found in existing legislation. The bill does not change the definition of these provisions. This bill also includes terms in the interpretation clause that the definition of which can be found in the common law system. We can also thought of attacks on Article 23 legislation. This can help build a firewall to ensure financial stability so that we can abide by the national strategy to place emphasis on financial security and financial development. Hong Kong is an international financial center. We are given this important mission of ensuring financial stability. In recent years, we've seen power struggles among major developed countries as well as risks on critical infrastructure, so on and so forth. Article 23 legislation can help establish and improve the legal system and enforcement mechanism on safeguarding national security, and this can help deal with extreme financial risks as well. The legislative exercise can also help create a stable environment with predictable risks and lower the unforeseeable risks in our financial system and make sure that our financial system is resilient against attacks. Now, under the framework of a comprehensive national security outlook, this Article 23 legislation can be a piece of important tool to help enhance the competitiveness in the and enhance the attractiveness of our capital market. It can help us prepare for extreme scenarios, such as deepening and broadening the renminbi offshore business and reduce our over-reliance on the single settlement system, and also help us meet financial needs of individuals and organizations in light of possible sanctions. So I resolutely support the Safeguarding National Security Bill. I so submit. Mr. Duncan Chiu. President, safeguarding national security is the obligation and duty of the Hong Kong SAR as well as every citizen here. National security is an important cornerstone for ensuring stability and continuous development. This is the constitutional duty of the Hong Kong SAR government. It is also the request laid down in Article 23 as well as the May 25th decision adopted by the NPC. I am honored to be part of the Legislative Council to be able to fulfill this historic mission. INT development is very much intertwined with the country's development, and in order to tackle national security risk, reference should be made to other jurisdictions on national security laws, so that whilst ensuring stability and prosperity, we can create the prerequisites for advancing INT developments. My sector and myself will support this bill as well as the administration's committee stage amendments. I'd also like to share with you the views of my sector on certain provisions. Say for the offense of espionage and state secrets, Clause 28 defines what state secret means. It involves secrets relating to the country and the SAR's development, a secret concerning the technological development of scientific technology of China and the Hong Kong SAR, and that's disclosure of without lawful authority will contravene the events if the disclosure is likely to endanger national security. Now, my sector is concerned that releasing R&D outcome may contravene the offense of theft of state secret because of this element. I explained to my sector. In fact, on the matter of state secrets at the Bills Committee, Mr. P.K. Tang, Secretary for Security, said in reply to members' questions that if it's 100%, if it is an R&D outcome 100% developed by the private sector without involvement of the Hong Kong SAR government, then it will not be a state secret and it will not automatically fall under the definition set out here. Now, if the R&D organization collaborates with the government in the process of research and development, or if the government has a role to play in the R&D process in the form of, say, subsidy or grant, and that if the organization is obliged to share the outcome or the benefit of the R&D outcome, there may be certain restrictions, and this may be caught by the state secret provision. Clauses 36, subclauses 1 to 3 provides the interpretation for authorized disclosure by specified persons such as a public officer, government contractor, etc. There is a defense if at the time of the offense the person believed that he has lawful authority to make the disclosure and had no reasonable grounds to believe otherwise, then the defense is available. So if the person discloses the R&D outcome with lawful authority with no intention to endanger national security, then one should not be caught by the law. So R&D personnel are rest assured can continue with their activities in Hong Kong. Well, I thank the Legislative Council for holding marathon meetings in the past 7 days. We scrutinized the bill with great efficiency. It also demonstrates the good interactions between the legislature and the executive. In order to ensure stability and prosperity in the long term and to fully, resolutely and faithfully implement one country, two systems principle, we need to pass the bill as quickly as possible. My sector and myself will continue to support the government so that we will join hand with the government in promoting high quality development in a stable, safe, and secured environment so as to contribute to our country's development. I support the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Mr. Rincon, President, I speak in support of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Hong Kong plays a pivotal role in the country's opening up to the world. In the past, Hong Kong had great economic achievements. Well, we still play a very important role in the global arena. But nowadays, we don't just talk about economic success and figures. In fact, this is a warfare without arms and ammunition. Apart from a physical war with arms and ammunition and weapons, war nowadays entails power struggles among nations. It also involves information security, food security, as well as space security. As we spearhead economic development, we should at the same time take a look at what is happening around us. Now, we're not equipped with the proper weapons. We need to have teeth, otherwise we will be weak in the face of other nations. We need to safeguard national security and to make sure that our country will not be invaded and our interests will not be undermined or will become a laughing stock. Now, what happened in 2014 was very different from that in 2004. A small child has become a young gentleman. We experienced financial crises, SARS, as well as COVID-19 pandemic. Hong Kong people weathered the storm, and there is all the more reason for us to enjoy life here. And yet, we were supposed to complete the legislative exercise more than 20 years ago. We've been dragging on our feet. 20 odd years ago, we just returned to the motherland. Those with ulterior motive used us as the pawn to test the bottom line of our country. Against this backdrop, I think the most sensible way is to rely on our legal system to overcome these challenges. I've taken a look at the laws around the world, especially other common law jurisdictions. That is the United Kingdom. In July last year, the latest National Security Act was passed. External interference has been made a criminal offense. By interference, it means an interference with the elections in the UK and interfering with the citizens' right to vote. According to their laws, if somebody continues to appeal to other nations to sanction one's own country or practices such activities abroad, undermining national interests, then apparently this person has committed the offense. The Anti-Terrorist Act passed in year 2000. The Terrorism Act was passed in year 2000 in the UK, and the subsequent amendments followed to broaden the definition of terrorists. Terrorists include those uses violence or threatens to use violence in order to achieve certain religious or political purposes. And according to another piece of legislation, called National Security and Investment Act 2021, the government will be authorized to conduct investigation in foreign investments that may undermine national interests or cause national security threats. It is such a draconian piece of legislation with great enforcement powers given to law enforcement agencies that this is unprecedented. In the U.S., there are at least 20 pieces of legislation relating to the economic, diplomatic, education aspects of the country, and it is related to national security. The magnitude is beyond comparison, in other words. In terms of safeguarding national security, in other countries, they have built a proper firewall, and they've continued to fortify their castle, whereas in the face of these countries, Hong Kong's situation is like one of a glass castle. We are very fragile and we are lagging so far behind. It is only right for us to plug the national security loophole by enacting national security legislation. We need to make sure we have the right weapons, and that means legislating on Article 23 of the Basic Law so as to further improve the legal system on safeguarding national security. This is an important step for us to have a place in the international community. Against the complex international landscape, we must all act in one and remind ourselves that national security is the constitutional duty of the Hong Kong SL government, and it is also every citizen's obligation to safeguard national security. After passage of the bill, we will continue to enjoy prosperity and stability.
Mr. Gary Zhang. Thank you, President. I support the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Just like other electoral members, I found out about the bill. I also listened to the deliberations of the Bills Committee. This bill has a clear target. The government also looked at national security laws overseas in drafting the bill. Electoral, we have looked at many bills about people's quality of life. Those laws tend to have a broad scope, but this bill is different. There's a clear scope. This bill targets just a handful of people with intent to endanger national security. I note that during the clause-by-clause scrutiny, the Bills Committee expressed concern about particular issues. The government gave clear responses. This bill is legally necessary. As we safeguard national security and maintain social stability, this bill is also a vital step. The Basic Law is the constitutional basis of Hong Kong. Article 23 of the Basic Law states clearly that we have the duty to legislate on our own against acts endangering national security. Since 1997, on offenses such as espionage, subversion, we have not had specific offenses on those crimes, and that's unimaginable in other countries. 2019 saw social turbulence. People learned about the threats of attempts to threaten national security. There's a need to protect people from extremist actions. Now, with this bill, we can protect our country. This bill can also show the trust between Hong Kong and the central authorities. With a better mechanism to keep our country safe, we can cement our status as an international financial center. This bill can also reassure overseas investors. As we bring in more foreign investments, we lay a solid foundation for our future generations. President, the early passage of this bill will allow our community to fully focus on economic development, and then we can improve people's lives, we can improve our society, and that will mean greater openness, stability, and inclusion, and that will mean a better future for Hong Kong. President, I so submit and I support the amendment. Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. In recent years, we have seen a series of actions from anti-China forces. 2014, illegal occupied Central. 2016, Mong Kok riots. 2019, the color revolutions. Many people suffered. In 2019, I was a district councillor. My office was surrounded and vandalized. The work could not continue, and I could not serve people. President Xi proposed the holistic view of national security, also proposed the 4 strategic points. National security matters in many areas, and the 4 comprehensive patterns also mention the idea of law-based governance across the country. For Hong Kong, we also need the rule of law. In 2020, the national security law was promulgated. We went from chaos to order. That law produced immediate effect. We thank the central authorities for that. For this bill, we had a month-long consultation. 13,000 submissions were received. 98.6% of the submissions were in favor. This shows a broad consensus on safeguarding national security as a necessity and a matter of urgency. Making laws to keep a country safe is a priority for different countries. Let's look at the US, Canada, and European countries. They have their own national security legislation. They have national security agencies as well. There are different views on the bill. Some people are worried about too many powers going to influence Europe. Our bill is more moderate. We show greater respect for civic rights. Is already public. President Xi Jinping also stated openly. The best governance means incorporating the rule of law. Legislation to keep our country safe is the way to go. We can zero in on the economy and pursue development and deliver support this bill. I so submit. Mr. Charles Siu Chong. Prohibit acts endangering national security is a constitutional process to legislate on our own under common law principles. This means the be safe. Sadly, that task has been overdue for years. This means hostile forces can do as they like. They even try to. Certain countries stated that they would use all the tools at their disposal. So, real. We cannot not let Hong Kong become a bridgehead and of the respondents were in favor of the bill. 500 trade social consensus on a law to keep our strike a proper balance in 2014, 16, and 2019. Bill proposes deterrent sentences, and also for theft. Meanwhile, the government also caters to concerns about there will be lawful protection for rights and freedoms under external interference endangering national security exchanges. President, public officers are the backbone of the city's administration. These officers also have a duty to keep our country safe. The bill states that public officers need to exercise their powers and discretion to help keep our country safe. Safeguarding national security has been made part of the core values of public officers. This bill expressly states this duty for public officers, so that would be more than just a belief, but action. Breaching the law for public officers is a serious offense, so it makes sense to have stiffer offenses. Here, I also want to thank the government and the Legislative Secretariat for their hard work. The Bills Committee has been very productive, hardworking. We have practical suggestions from the Bills Committee. The government explained matters pragmatically and professionally. The explanation helped allay public concerns. The government has also proved itself to be responsive. Many amendments are proposed. This shows the healthy interaction between the executive and the legislature. I hope that once this bill is passed, we can better protect our country, and then our community can focus on the economy and improve people's lives. I so submit. I support the bill.
Mr. Ma Fung-kwok. President, 21 years ago, I was a Bills Committee member of the Safeguarding National Security Amendments Bill 2003. Our effort was in vain. Now, 20 years on, we are now at the final step. 27 years after reunification, finally, we have a piece of local legislation for safeguarding national security. This is how we are going to fulfill our constitutional obligation and safeguard our image as an international financial center. We are the most internationalized city in the country. We have to protect ourselves from external interference. For a very long time, whenever I was consulted by officials or the media, when is the best time to legislate for Article 23? My answer has always been any time at all. Only with a stable country can we have a life. This is a fact in the contemporary world. Every country and jurisdiction has their responsibility to legislate for safeguarding their national security. They have a duty to protect an ultimate protection for national, personal, and minority interest. Now, as a member of the collective community, we have to fulfill our duty. Legislation for Article 23 is our constitutional obligation, but as a subject of the nation, it is our natural obligation to uphold national security, and we have to prepare to make sacrifices for this. Some 10 years ago, I was learned that some legislative members received coordination and support from external forces. In secret, they flew to foreign countries to receive direction from the external governments during summer break, and they come back and initiated the 2014 Occupy Central movement. Shortly before 2019, young members were sponsored by Western organizations to learn and get trained on how to mount rebellions. Now, some protesters who appeared in protests in Ukraine and other anti-government protests, we found their shadows amongst the rioters in 2019. I was greatly saddened. On one hand, a lot of legislative councillors had very vague ideas on national security, and they allowed themselves to be manipulated by external forces. And I was saddened that we don't have our own sets of law to protect ourselves against external interference and using us against the country. Now, some people are still absconding overseas. Now, I think it is reasonable to add a new offense of colluding with external force endangering national security. Now, the speedy completion of scrutiny shows that after the lessons learned in 2019, there is a consensus in society that we need as soon as possible a set of law to prevent black-clad violence from rekindling. But compared with the national security laws in existence in the Western countries, our Safeguarding National Security Bill has offered reasonable protection on human rights and defense. The punishment is not draconian. I have to thank the 15 BC members and the secretariat of the Bills Committee for working around the clock. I thank the governments for paying heed to our suggestions to introduce amendments to the bill so that we can protect ourselves against national security risk and refocus our energy on economic developments and create a better future for one country, two systems. This has been something that I've been longing for many years. I so submit, I support the second reading as well as the amendments to the bill. Mr. Chen Yong, Mr. Brave Chen. Thank you, President. Thank you, Secretaries. National security, Hong Kong security, individual security. This is important. We have to pass and enact Article 23 in a highly efficient and high-quality manner. Now, I myself and the NPC and CPPCC sector that I am representing both offer our staunch support for the bill. According to the holistic view on national security and Presidency's thoughts on national security, under one country, two systems, to enjoy long-term stability, we have to ensure national security. From the Opium War to the anti-Japanese aggression war to the contemporary world, everyone in Hong Kong and in China's life and career and safety and also this future generation are safeguarded by national security. We have waited for over 26 years. We have been discussing this bill for 26 years. In the international community, this might be one of the national security legislation which has undergone scrutiny for the longest period of time. Now, I look forward to the passage of the bill, after which everyone would work together to uphold national security. During the scrutiny period, everyone has worked closely together, tirelessly, showcasing our commitments and determination. Now, the bill is highly efficient. Under the common law principles, we have followed all the established practice in terms of definition, interpretation, and ensure compatibility with the Hong Kong NSL. The sooner we complete the passage of the law, the sooner we will be protected. The structure of the bill is robust. The details are all in place. It is supported by the general public. It is well trusted among the public. According to the survey, over 98% of the respondents supported the bill. It is in line with international standards. Now, the U.S. national security law may be one of the most draconian laws in the world. They are installing anti-terrorist safeguards on their doorsteps, but they are smearing our efforts to do the same. Everyone with a conscience would see that. But the national security law is the security safeguards for the Hong Kong territory. The national security law. Now, for the Article 23, it is the safeguard in front of our own doorsteps. So with the two combined together, we can be safe. Now, those who have seen war would treasure peace. After 2014, 2019, black-led violence and Hong Kong independence, we evermore treasure national security and unity. Various sectors look forward to the government's upholding our rights and national security. Under the leadership of Mr. John Lee, after the passage of the law, we can take initiative in upholding national security and better integrate into the national development blueprint, high-quality development, and refocus our energy on economic development, improving livelihood. I staunchly support the bill. Thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong. President, enactment of Article 23 is our constitutional obligation. 26 years after reunification, we are yet to establish a comprehensive mechanism to be the gatekeeper for the country. This is our debt, and we need to pay the debt. The longer it is overdue, the higher the cost will be. We have witnessed that clearly in the past several years. With ever-heightened geopolitical tension, national security risks are more serious. We have seen many storms, and there is a consensus that we have to fulfill this historical duty to live up to the country and ourselves. I salute every individual who has participated in this scrutiny work. Every individual counts. As LegCo member, this is our duty. I support the legislation. I believe everyone in Hong Kong looks forward to this milestone so that we can establish a comprehensive national security mechanism so that we can see a better future. I so submit.
Mr. Yu Pak Lau. President, I speak in support of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. The object of the bill is to establish and improve the legal system and enforcement mechanism for safeguarding national security so as to suppress, prevent, and punish acts and activities endangering national security in accordance with the law. It is only reasonable that we enact legislation to safeguard national security. It's only because of the anti-China destabilizing elements that we have been dragging on our feet. Now we're in the final furlong. As a member of this council, I feel honored to be able to participate in this historic moment to put in the last piece of the puzzle to plug national security loopholes. Now, as mentioned, against political tensions and complex international landscape, we need to plug this loophole as quickly as possible to better protect our people. Various sectors of the community understand the need to enact legislation as quickly as possible. Close to 99% of submissions responding to the consultation are in support of the bill. There is a broad consensus in the community. There is good interaction between the executive and the legislature. We scrutinize the bill with efficiency. I need to thank the administration for listening to the views of the public wholeheartedly and tirelessly and also to rebut the smearing and attacks on us. I also thank members for participating in the marathon-style meetings, putting forward over 1,000 questions. These members have looked at the bill very carefully. They've also made some very good suggestions. Some of them have been incorporated in the amendments. With full cooperation between the legislature and the executive, we're able to complete the legislative process in just 2 months. Now, as said by the Secretary for Justice, we're able to hand in the perfect homework. As a member here, I understand that the cornerstone to the tourism industry's development is stability and prosperity. Occupy Central movement happened in 2014. This led to Mongkok riots and territory-wide disturbances. Now, I worked in a hotel at the time, situated in Mongkok. That was a site of occupation. Some tourists were forced to cancel or truncate their itinerary. Some hotel orders got cancelled. During 2019, black-clad violence, rioters attacked airports. They caused havoc in the streets. They also shouted abuse at tourists. The tourism industry bore the brunt. Visitor figures had a free fall drop of up to 40%. it is important to ensure prosperity and stability and provide a stable environment for investors and for people to do business here. Only by passing the Safeguarding National Security Bill will we be able to focus our energy on economic development and improving people's livelihood. The government should, as a next step, mount major publicity in public education to raise the public's awareness of national security, as well as enhancing the sense of nationhood among our people, so that we can all chip in building a safe and secure Hong Kong, so that we can allow a smooth sailing of one country, two systems principle and contribute to the country's development. I give my unwavering support to the bill. I'm going to support the administration's amendments as well. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, President. It's been 27 years, and that's a long time. Now we are witnessing this important moment of enacting on Article 23 of the Basic Law. Establishing and improving the legal system on safeguarding national security will help the long-term stability and prosperity in Hong Kong and safeguard people's rights and freedoms here. I'd like to thank members of the Bills Committee, the government officials, as well as the staff of the Legislative Council. We've had numerous meetings in a week, and we all took a very serious attitude in examining the bill so as to complete this exercise as quickly as possible. In fact, even before this exercise began, the government publicized the content of the bill on various channels and dispelled rumors and allayed concerns. Many teachers at the moment are concerned about the offences and the relevant provisions in the bill. They are tasked with passing on knowledge to their students, and in order to implement national security education, teachers must also know the bill cover to cover in order to do their job properly. So on Article 23 legislation, the government should implement public education and also implement rule of law education. Through continuous efforts in publicity and public education, we'll be able to enhance the teachers' knowledge on the bill. They will understand the scope of the bill, the relevant definitions, and the offences. At the same time, we can make sure that teachers comes with grips with the correct values and knowledge of the bill to groom our next generation. We should also work on parent education so as to instill in them the correct values and enhance the knowledge on national security so that for our younger generation, they can be instilled with the values of law-abidedness since young. President, we've had a somber lesson. We've had a painful experience of what happened in the past. And by now, I think everyone realizes that foreign anti-China elements are still trying to make a move on us. These elements are still deploying different tactics to incite our younger generation. There are different forms of soft resistance, such as making use of worksheets, graphic novels, and textbooks to brainwash our younger generation. In fact, there is a set of materials, such as worksheets and teaching kits, etc., published by the foreign forces to indoctrinate toxic ideas in the minds of younger generation. We are concerned that these materials may very well infiltrate our school campuses. Now, this piece of legislation can help us do a proper gatekeeping job so that we can review all the teaching materials and textbooks again to make sure that our students are protected. I support enactment of Article 23 of the Basic Law. This is an important safety net for us. It protects our country, our home, our younger generation, and our future. I support the bill and the administration's amendments. Professor Lau Chi-Pang.
Of the Safeguarding National Security Bill and all its amendments. In the 1980s, following the British occupation of Hong Kong, the territory was declared a free port with unrestricted movement of people, capital, and goods. This free port policy has been maintained in Hong Kong until today. While Hong Kong's status as a free port has undoubtedly facilitated trade and commerce, establishing it as a leading commercial hub in the Far East, the unrestricted nature of a free port has also posed significant security risks to Hong Kong, making it a vulnerable gap in our national security. During the Cold War after World War II, the Chinese people once again faced the crisis of foreign aggression on the soil when a United Nations force, led by the United States, intervened in the Korean War. At this most dangerous time for the Chinese nation, the Chinese People Volunteer Army achieved numerous remarkable victories in the war to resist U.S. aggression, dealing heavy blows to U.S. troops in major battles such as Changjinhu and Sangganling, and successfully defending China's territorial integrity. However, this also led to political consequences of an embargo imposed by dozens of United Nations member states, severely impacting China's social development during its founding period. At that time, under British rule, Hong Kong continued to play the role of an unrestricted free port, providing convenient access for intelligence agents from Western countries to gather information on China's national conditions, posing a continuous threat to China's national security. Fortunately, the Chinese government at that time balanced its relations with the East and the West through a broad global perspective and superb diplomatic strategies, maintaining Hong Kong's prosperity and development in a stable and harmonious political environment, focusing on economic and trade development, and ultimately building Hong Kong into the international metropolis it is today. With the return of Hong Kong to China in 1997 and the restoration of China's sovereignty over Hong Kong, legislating to maintain national security has become a top priority. Despite initial uncertainty among Hong Kong citizens regarding the need for legislation to maintain national security, in recent years, the successful implementation of the national security law in Hong Kong has effectively stopped social unrest originated from outside the territory and restored its stability and prosperity to Hong Kong. This has finally made citizens realize that local legislation to maintain national security is urgent and cannot be delayed. Today, Chairman, with the support of Hong Kong citizens and various sectors of society, and through the collaborative efforts of the government and the Legislative Council, the national security law has finally reached the final stage of legislation. It is an honor for me to fulfill my duties in the Legislative Council chamber, participate in and witness this important historical movement of legislating the safeguarding national security law. Chairman, I conclude my remarks.
Mr. Chen Pui-Leung, I'm honored to serve as a legislative member and witnessing the enacting of the local legislation for Article 23 of the Basic Law. This is a constitutional duty. It's a task overdue for 26 years. Once we get this bill through, we will be able to meet the aspirations from the community. This bill is in line with the interest of Hong Kong people. I fully support this bill. History shows our long-term development will mean we need to keep turbulence at bay. I support this bill, and I think the earlier we enact a bill, the better we are. We now see changes unseen in a century. Foreign forces will keep smearing this bill. The sooner we get the bill through, the sooner we mitigate the shortcoming in national security. Once we have all the institutions in place to keep our country safe, Hong Kong will be able to offer a stable business environment, and then we will be able to focus on the economy and improve people's quality of life, and we will see long-term prosperity. I see false reports from foreign media. Those media claim Article 23 legislation will spell the end of Hong Kong and foreign businesses will pull out. I must point out that the insurers I come into contact with point to a different picture. Hong Kong is a risk management center. We have 160 insurers in Hong Kong, nearly 2,500 licensed insurance intermediaries. Many are held and run by foreign investors. These foreign investors have little concern about this bill. They know the background and reasons for this bill. These foreign investors know this bill will have no impact on normal business dealings. We prize the rule of law. This bill also protects human rights. There are clear rules and restrictions on enforcement powers. Capital, people, information can flow freely within the framework of the law. I also want to point out that when it comes to national security, the powers are usually something held by the national authorities. But here in Hong Kong, the central authorities respect the HKSAR and they trust us. So the central authorities delegated that power to us. The central authorities trust us, so we need to do our part and get this bill through. We owe the central authorities, and this is how we can fulfill, and how the way we fulfill this task means that we can complete our constitutional responsibility. I also commend the government for its commitment. The members of the Bills Committee worked tirelessly in a focused and diligent way. Everyone shared the same goal. This shows with patriots administering Hong Kong, we have the executive and the legislature working closely together in healthy interactions, and we all work towards safeguarding national security. We can create a better future as we all work together. President, I so submit, I fully support the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Mr. Edmund Wong. President, we are resuming the second reading of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. It's a historic moment. More than 20 years later, we're finally stepping up to the plate of safeguarding national security by enacting a law on keeping our country safe. We are building this barrier to protect our country. I thank the Department of Justice, the Security Bureau, and all the Bills Committee's members on this bill and the community for their effort, their support, and contributions to this bill. I talked to trade associations and also foreign accountants bodies, among other stakeholders. We had more than 20 engagements on this bill. We discussed this bill and found out the views and concerns of the accounting profession. I helped allay their concerns. As a representative of the accounting sector, I can say with confidence, the accounting sector fully supports this bill. They believe this bill can help us better cope with risks. We can guard against cyber attacks, terrorism, and money laundering. These risks threaten the financial system. This bill can help foster our stability and resilience as a financial center. There will be stability for the financial market. During our exchanges, some accountants raised points about state secrets, external forces, among other points. I raised those concerns At legislative meetings, the government explained the matters. With our robust legal system, I believe those concerns are unwarranted. I have also explained in detail to my sector, and that's how I allayed their concerns. Hong Kong's accountants work frequently and closely with other parts of the world. Our accountants come into contact with overseas bodies. There are collaborations and interactions, and that includes overseas regulators. So this bill expressly states that unless you're acting on the instructions of foreign bodies to threaten national security or disrupt Hong Kong, unless you fall into that category, contact with overseas bodies is fine. The Secretary for Security has made this clear time and again. Hong Kong is an international financial center of our country. Over the years, our businesses have had all kinds of exchanges with overseas bodies. But those contacts are normal business dealings. They are not actions to endanger national security. Accountants come into contact with clients, and that includes state-owned enterprises. That way, accountants may come across sensitive information. But accountants come into contact with such materials in a lawful way for a lawful purpose. There are strict codes of conduct in the accounting sector. Accountants also have clear rules on how to handle the sensitive materials. Even if overseas regulators demand such materials, our accountants will follow our country's protocol on handling those materials. So there will be no unlawful disclosure, acquisition, or possession of state secrets. To help the overseas community better understand this bill, I penned articles arguing that our economic and trade officers and Invest Hong Kong's officers should help out. Those officers should talk to overseas businesses and media about this bill and counter any untrue or misleading claims about this bill. I so submit I fully support this bill and its amendments. Dr. Junius Ho. President, I fully support this bill. I'm pleased to see that we are resuming the second reading and we'll move to the third reading of this bill. We have been waiting for this bill for so long. Now, here are my thoughts. We have the National Security Law, Article 7. That law took effect on June 30th, 2020. Article 7 says that we should complete national security legislation as soon as we can. Our country took less than 5 weeks to enact the NSL. This year, our country took this legislation seriously. On January 25th, the Chief Executive announced the legislation at the Q&A session, and now today, on March 19th, we moved quickly to the second reading of this bill. We wasted a couple of years in the past, but I commend the current government for acting decisively. This is in line with our country's expectations, and that is completing the legislation as soon as possible. It took less than 5 weeks to get through the NSL. On March 8th, the bill was gazetted, and then on 19th of March, we resumed the second reading and the third reading. We are up to scratch on that. Once we get this bill through, our job remains incomplete. Our enemies are biding their time. With this bill, we make life harder for our enemies. This bill will allow us to improve our national security legislation. Part 1 was done on June 30th, 2020. But there are ongoing tasks. Article 5 of the NSL states that we need to guard against, prevent, suppress, and impose punishments for acts and activities endangering national security. We're now completing Part 2 of the work with this bill, but there are ongoing tasks for us. Article 10 or 9 of the NSL states that there are tasks for the government, for the media, the internet, non-governmental organizations, and schools and universities. The government needs to raise national security awareness. That is an ongoing effort. So with this bill's passage, we need to be mindful that there is work ahead. The enemies are still there. The enemies don't like this bill. They did not expect the swift passage of this bill, but they are biding their chance. To improve the overall institutions for national security, we have an ongoing mission. We need to speak up. We need to do better in education as well. My third thought is this. The Chief Executive laid down key performance indicators on national security education. I talked to roughly 2,000 teachers about national security legislation. Most of the feedback I got was positive, but there was a sizable portion that remained negative. I was talking about the law. There were teachers gaming on the phone, chatting with one another, or dozing off. That's the attitude of some teachers. I was there to train the trainers, but there were teachers dozing off, gaming, chatting with one another, or staring at me. After the training session, some teachers wrote in the feedback asking why get Junius Ho to train us. Junius Ho knew nothing. Junius Ho talked in abusive ways. Back in 2019, there were people hurling verbal abuse. Those teachers did not speak up. I fully support this bill. The Security Bureau's work is something I commend, but how do we truly implement the law? That will be a daunting task that requires ongoing effort. It will be an ongoing task. So today marks just a start in our journey. We are just getting started. We need to go beyond just what's superficial. We need to get the message across. That way, our young people will get the message. I'm glad to see young people speaking up for Hong Kong. We need to leverage our strength to deliver what our country needs. We need young people who can tell good stories of us. And I'm glad to see our young people going global. I support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Tony Jie. Thank you, President. President, during the consultation period for the Article 23, I've met with many professionals from the sector, and those professionals supported the bill. A minority of them didn't quite understand the difference between Hong Kong NSL and the Article 23, as well as the improved electoral system. Is Article 23 enactment still urgent? My answer was positive. Legislation for Article 23 is the constitutional obligation enshrined in the Basic Law. 27 years on, we have to act promptly to complete the obligation. As national subjects, as a Hong Kong citizen, it is natural for us to safeguard national security and uphold national sovereignty, unity, and development interests. Some say that the most pressing task is boosting the economy and improving livelihood. If you look at the contemporary history of our country and also from the world history, without national security and stability, there can never be economic development and happiness for children. Several years ago, we experienced the black-clad violence and the Hong Kong version of Color Revolution. It highlighted how real the national security risk Hong Kong was. Now, in the US, Australia, and the UK, there are even more far-reaching, comprehensive, and draconian national security law. They barrel through the legislation without consulting the public. Some of these countries even use the excuse of national security to suppress the development interests of other countries and maintain their military and economical hegemony. Now, there are worries that the Article 23 would affect human rights and liberties. Now, in the preamble, the bill sets out that we have to uphold the overarching principle of one country, two systems. And in Clause 2, it sets out the focus on respecting human rights, no double jeopardy, presumption of innocence, and also other common law canons. These principles are reflected in various clauses. For example, Clause 73, extending the extension period for suspects having committed national security offenses. Now, the proposal is 48 hours plus 7 days and 7 days, so put together no more than 16 days. It is much shorter than many other countries. And also, an application of extension of detention must be approved by magistrates. So the judiciary plays an independent role in this. Some say that people may be unwittingly caught by the law. The reality is, most of the offenses require the prosecution to prove mens rea, criminal intent, and deliberation for conviction. For example, incitement to treason. There must be a public manifestation of treasonous intent concerning collusion and disclosure of state secrets. There is also the requirement of intent to endanger national security. During the scrutiny period, many members have asked a question in relation to the conviction threshold of certain offenses. The threshold were too high in their opinions. Now, clauses 112 and 113 concerning doxing behaviors concerning lawyers, judges, and police officers and other public officers. Now, the prosecution must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant has intent and mens rea with a possibility to harm the officers for conviction. Now, concerning unlawful disclosure of state secrets, the law sets out that the prosecution must prove that the defendant does so knowingly and deliberately. And there is also the public interest defense that is specified disclosure in Clause 19. Now, in most Western countries, the national security law doesn't include any defense. President, the bill can effectively safeguard national security while putting equal focus and safeguard on the conventional rights and liberties and freedoms. The punishments compared with other countries are reasonable and rightly balanced. I and G19 members fully support the bill's passage. Thank you. Mr. Adrian Ho.
In late January of this year, the Hong Kong SAR government initiated a public consultation to legislate Article 23 of the Basic Law. I wholeheartedly support the SAR government's effort to enact local laws that fulfill our constitutional responsibilities and obligations outlined by the 528 decision and the Hong Kong National Security Law. The restoration of normalcy in Hong Kong society is a testament to the effective implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law. I'm firmly convinced that the present moment offers an ideal opportunity to press forward with the legislation of the Article 23 National Security Bill. Moreover, I maintain that enhancing the legal framework of the Hong Kong SAR to meet national security imperatives is a crucial step toward ensuring that offenses threatening national security are addressed with fairness and expediency. I eagerly anticipate the successful passage of the National Security Bill, which promises to comprehensively address national security vulnerability, foster a stable social milieu in Hong Kong, and more importantly, alleviate the public's apprehensions, culminating in an improved governance structure for Hong Kong. Such a development would not only steer Hong Kong from effective governance to prosperity, but also pave the way for a thriving future. It would also empower all sectors within Hong Kong to devote their energies to bolstering the economy. Throughout the legislative process, it is my belief that the SAR government has judiciously balanced the imperative of safeguarding national security with the need for economic advancement. Given Hong Kong's stature as an international financial center, the legislation's precise delineation of offenses pertaining to foreign interference is commendable, mitigating additional compliance burdens for foreign businesses. This clarity is a vital factor in securing Hong Kong's economic stability. As we stand at this pivotal juncture of legislating Article 23, which coincides with the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China and the 5th anniversary of the outlined development plan for the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, we can anticipate that the successful completion of this legislative endeavor will afford the SARs of Hong Kong and Macau more comprehensive legal safeguards. Consequently, the collaboration and development between Hong Kong and Macau are poised to enter a new era, exemplifying the central government's pledge to uphold one country, two systems, guaranteeing a high degree of autonomy, and securing the continued prosperity and stability of both regions while promoting economic growth and enhancing the well-being of the citizens. I earnestly hope that the enactment of this legislation will amplify the momentum for Hong Kong and Macau to capitalize on their unique strengths and attributes, extend the influence, actively contribute to the construction of the Greater Bay Area, aligning with the high-quality development objectives referenced by Premier Li Qiang in his government work report. I fully endorse the SAR government's progress in advancing the legislative work of the National Security Bill. It is my aspiration that upon completing this historic task, the SAR government will lead Hong Kong into an era marked by even greater stability and a solidified social foundation, thereby creating more favorable prospects for economic growth and societal advancement. President, this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Mr. Andrew Lam. Deputy President, legislating for national security is a constitutional obligation imposed on Hong Kong under the Basic Law. Despite diverging views, no one has questioned the necessity of the legislation. 20 years on, there is still a gap in national security. It led to numerous political turmoil, and it created many parasites, and there were those who said that the risk was an exaggeration, now it has proven to be not. Now, we have seen 5 terms of governments in Hong Kong. This term of the government, once again, launched the legislative campaign for Article 23. The LegCo spends 50 years on diligently scrutinizing the bill. For those who still say this is barreling through the legislation, they should be ashamed. Without national security, people can't live in safety. A lot of countries legislate for their own national security laws sneakily, and they have put up a high wall around themselves. Allow me to repeat the minister in the UK. He said, the UK government will do its best to protect the country from the threats posed by external agents' actions in the territory. Now, the nature may be different, but the risk is still there. In recent years, the risk has become more complicated. One of the government's missions is to do its best to ensure that the legislative framework is kept abreast of time and supports the enforcement actions of the department. Hostile actors' activities in the homeland is a risk. We have to think deeper. We have to outcompete these hostile actors to foil their attempts to disrupt our system. I will do my best to uphold national security from foreign interference and risk. The enactment of the national security legislation is to better prepare us to fend off these risks and put us in the forefront of the global intelligence community." End quote. Now, this is the same everywhere. Hong Kong is no exception. There are dubious claims that Hong Kong has a different political system. As a result, the Article 23 will lead to major concerns. I have to tell these people, safeguarding national security is not a privilege in the Western political systems. For these mirroring attempts, we have to keep on guard and rebut them. Now, the bill before us modeled upon the 2 human rights covenants and the basic law. There is sufficient safeguards for personal freedom and liberty, but there is no absolute freedom in the world. Restrictions based on national security is a common practice in the world. These are enshrined in the ICCPR and the ICESCR. Under the law, prior to conviction, all defendants are presumed to be innocent. Now, the prosecution has to prove beyond reasonable doubt the intent and the actus reus before conviction. These are safeguards for the rights of the defendants and the accused. Now, the government has reiterated all these rights time and again. For most people living in Hong Kong, we understand the necessity of these requirements, and we are not afraid to be caught on the wrong side of the law. We are only completing this duty 27 years after reunification. It is not fast at all. If you compare our legislation with other jurisdictions' national security law, it is only natural for us to enact local legislation to uphold national security. We have adopted the common law practice and made the provisions clear. Without mens rea, without an intent to endanger national security, why should you be afraid? I so submit I support the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Mr. Chen Hao-fung.
Deputy President, local legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law was gazetted on the 8th of March this year. Following that, we immediately started scrutinizing the bill. And meanwhile, Western media continued to smear the bill and the government to no avail. This is all due to the good work of the government's rebuttal team in setting the record straight and dispelling rumors and misunderstandings. Now, I am a witness to this historic moment as 26 years after return to the motherland, we are now enacting legislation on Article 23. I feel honored We need to watch out for the villains. I would say that in recent years, the Western countries have blatantly smeared us. Well, in attending a security forum last year, the U.S. official said that the Chinese intelligence network was under attack, and it's been 10 years since then. They are still unable to rebuild this network, and according to this U.S. official, they've achieved progress in collecting intelligence about our country. Well, this leader of the intelligence organization in U.S. blatantly tells us that they collect intelligence and engage in such activities about our country. Well, in the past, we believed that only the United States would spend such amount of resources in tapping into other countries' intelligence. But in fact, in another example recently, I learned otherwise. A Canadian businessman was arrested in 2018 for helping an official a Canadian official in the mainland to take pictures about the military facilities in the territory. 3 years later, he was deported. And then this businessman filed a claim against the Canadian government. 7 million Canadian dollars were in the end awarded as the gag money. I think it's clear what this is about and who is behind it. Well, this incident was not revealed until this year or last year. And this is just a tip of the iceberg. For UK, US, Australia, Singapore, New Zealand, they also have relevant national security laws to keep their homes safe and keep out the enemies. Now, for our legislative exercise, the Western countries have responded quite rigorously. It is apparent that they adopt double standards. In recent years, they act even more blatantly. So, Hong Kong is an inalienable part of China. We must make sure that the loopholes are plugged. Article 23 legislation seeks to safeguard sovereignty, territorial integrity, national development interests, and to make sure that the people and the land are safe from threats. I give my full support to this bill. I also support all the amendments. Thank you. Mr. Ambrose Lam. Deputy President. Well, I'm a lawyer by profession, and it is our natural duty to safeguard the rule of law. As a council member, I also understand that it is my duty to enact legislation in light of the social circumstances that can meet the needs of the people. Now, for this legislative exercise, this will help government fulfill its constitutional duty to enact on Article 23 of the Basic Law. I feel honored. In 2014, Hong Kong experienced the Occupy movement that was followed by the Black Clad violence in 2019. There was a great chaos in Hong Kong and everyone bore the consequence. At the same time, we learned the importance of safeguarding national security. I thank the Security Force Justice and the Security Bureau for having full regard to the views of members as well as the general public, so that whilst safeguarding national security, human rights as enshrined in the Basic Law are safeguarded. There is also protection for investments and doing business in Hong Kong. I'd also like to thank members for offering views here. For example, under unlawful disclosure, there is now a defense of public interest. Now the court will be the gatekeeper in clarifying the definitions of certain terms such as government contractor, critical infrastructure, etc. I agree with what Mr. Jeffrey Lam said. Instead of using the term lawyer or solicitor or counsel, the new term will be used, and that is legal representative. This can help prevent abuse. The government has considered thoroughly in drawing up this bill. This can help safeguard the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong people whilst safeguarding national security. Well, in the UK and the US, there is this mechanism of a regime called special lawyers. Fortunately, this has not been adopted in a local legislation. That means for sensitive and national security related cases, only special lawyers should take these cases. For special lawyers, they undergo rigorous integrity checking. And this, in a way, will also limit the defendant's or the suspect's choice in their legal representation. Now, Hong Kong has not adopted this mechanism. Only under special circumstances would law enforcement agencies be able to apply with the court to impose restrictions on the suspect's right to consult a lawyer. Now, there is the UK's information. The National Security and Investment Act 2021, as well as the Australian law. The act in the US. And under these two pieces of legislation, the court can order disclosure of the dealings between businesses, and this can undermine the confidentiality principle. We respect investments and we provide safeguards for businesses and investment here. So we have not adopted this approach. I believe with passage of the bill, Hong Kong will be a safer and more stable place. Our investors will have greater protection. I'd like to thank the 15 members of the Bills Committee as well as the Electoral Secretariat for their tireless efforts, so that after the marathon-style meetings, we have completed the scrutiny of the bill. I support the bill and the amendments. Mr. Vincent Tang. Thank you, Deputy President. We are now resuming the second reading of the Safeguarding National Security Bill today. This is a historic moment. I'd like to thank the 15 members of the Bills Committee for their tireless effort in examining the bill. They've put forward a lot of suggestions. The administration will propose some amendments. I'd also like to thank the government for realizing this goal. It's been a long-awaited one, 27 years after return to the motherland. Well, I feel honored to be able to take part in this meaningful work of examining the bill. It is important to explain the details of this bill to the public. I remember back then I visited different forums and I asked about whether there is support for Article 23 legislation. At the time, the Hong Kong National Security Law was not yet enacted. The clear answer, however, was that we should enact on Article 23 as quickly as possible. We had the Occupy Central movement in 2014, Mongkok riot in 2016, and Black Clad violence in 2019. We witnessed how properties were vandalized, including my ward offices. Electoral members, judges, they face international sanctions. Some officers have had their personal data as well as that of the family members disclosed on the internet. They were victims of doxing. Even our family members faced threats. And then some rioters hurled petrol bombs, and they have been sentenced to imprisonment, and there are still those lurking behind the scene with ulterior motive. That is why we need to enact Safeguarding National Security Ordinance as quickly as possible to tackle the increasing national security risk against the complex international landscape. Some foreign forces are still ogling. They want to make a move on us, and they continue to smear us and smear Hong Kong. They also continue to meddle with the internal affairs of our country and the relationship between our country and Hong Kong. In fact, some foreign politicians have talked about how their interests will be undermined after this bill has been passed. I think this is nothing but slinging mud on us. This is a threat on the interests of our citizens. As a Chinese citizen, it is important that we all fulfill our obligation to safeguard national security. I give my unwavering support to the bill today, exactly For this reason, we need to plug the loophole and address the shortcomings and inadequacies in national security in Hong Kong. We must do it as quickly as possible. Deputy President, this bill contains provisions that will keep us safe, such as new offences of insurrection, etc. During the public consultation, 13,000 submissions were received, the majority of which are in support of the enactment of NS legislation. This is also the majority view. It is loud and clear that Hong Kong people support this bill. I've been told by many Hong Kong people that we should proceed with it as quickly as possible. Now, I give my staunching support to the bill, and I also thank the government for taking on board the members' views. They have proposed 91 amendments. Now, after passage of the bill, we must bear in mind that the objective of the bill is to establish and improve the legal system and enforcement mechanism our national security, so as to better prevent, suppress, and punish acts and activities endangering national security, and better protect those who live, work, and study in Hong Kong, so that they can continue to enjoy their lawful rights, so that our assets, properties, investments can have the proper safeguards, and only with this piece of legislation can we effectively tackle acts and activities endangering national security. And only when that happens can we strive for economic development.
Mr. Chen Kin-po, thank you. This legislation has been outstanding for more than 20 years, and that leaves Hong Kong vulnerable to actions from external forces. With this bill, we can plug the loophole in national security, and we can ensure our long-term stability without worrying about interference from foreign forces, and then we can focus on the economy. The drafting of this bill is in line with common law conventions and international practice. This bill covers a number of national security offenses. The bill also takes into account Hong Kong's unique status, our links with the overseas community. So there are high thresholds for offenses. All in all, the bill strikes a balance between national security and protection of human rights. This bill is in line with international practice and protects business interests. Western countries take national security seriously. As early as the 18th century, some Western countries passed laws on sedition and other national security offenses. Some countries have more than a dozen national security laws, and those countries keep updating their laws to better protect themselves. Every country has the right to enact their own laws on national security. Hong Kong also has the right to legislate for national security. The national security law has been around for 3 years. There is transparency in court proceedings. Law enforcement agencies follow the legal protocol. This shows Hong Kong can handle national security cases. National security matters, but some people don't know well how that works. So let me illustrate how national security matters for the economy. Hong Kong and Singapore are both part of the 4 Asian dragons. Before 1997, Hong Kong and Singapore were neck and neck. But then after 1997, we have been marking time. It took immense effort just for us to go ahead with major infrastructure projects. But let's look at Singapore. No foreign interference. They can focus on their economy. Singapore's economy has overtaken Hong Kong. Wages are higher in Singapore than in Hong Kong. The median wage is around 30,000 Hong Kong dollars in Singapore, whereas in Hong Kong, the median wage is 20,000 Hong Kong dollars. We need national security before we can talk about economic prosperity. Once this bill is passed, we can focus on the economy. We can make up for lost time and unrealized economic development. Some people worry about inadvertent breaches. The government has done its part in allaying concerns. We follow common law conventions. It's for the prosecution to prove criminal actions and criminal intent. Those without a criminal intent will not be caught. This bill also includes a public interest defense, and that's the defense for specified disclosure in relation to state secrets. Now, for unlawful acquisition of state secrets, having no knowledge about that is a defense, so there will be no inadvertent breaches. The thresholds for conviction are high. For external interference, there are three elements: collaboration with external forces, improper means, and acting with interference effect. You need all three elements proved before a conviction can be secured. So with all those safeguards, people will not get caught inadvertently. That should be enough to reassure the public and businesses. We have had marathon meetings. We covered all those provisions, 181 clauses. Still, the Bills Committee stuck to the highest standards in scrutinizing every clause, in clarifying every concern, and urged the government to move amendments. So our bill can stand any test. Our officials and the Electoral Secretariat worked hard. I thank them. I fully support the bill. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Deputy President. Today, we are discussing Article 23. Legislating for Article 23 is our constitutional duty. I'm emotional at seeing that we are getting this job done. Back in 2003, we know what happened. Article 23 became a taboo in politics. The opposition camp used that to label people in support of Article 23. Even mentioning of Article 23 drew criticism. In 2020, the national security law was promulgated, and then we have this improved electoral system. So now we have a highly productive legislature. I thank the Bills Committee for holding marathon meetings over 7 days. They worked tirelessly. Members scrutinized the bill with care. Members who are not on the Bills Committee also did their job. We have been promoting this bill. There is strong popular support, but that doesn't mean smooth sailing. There are external forces with ulterior motives, and that includes some local media. These people spread false messages. Some people wondered why the rush. So some people with ulterior motive said the government is trying to ram this bill through. That warranted a good explanation. We are seeing speed because the government has been working with the legislature. The president of LegCo explained we are following the rules. I asked the doubters, what are you waiting for then? We are saying the sooner we can get the bill through, the better. That's why LegCo held meetings over the weekend in a way allowed under the rules of procedure. There was a public consultation. It has never been a question of whether to go ahead with the bill, because we all agree we should go ahead. So the focus has been on the clauses instead. Occasionally, there are false news reports. There are claims about banning social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and the following day, that media outlet apologized for the false report, but the damage has already been done. That's why legislators have to explain the bill to people. Other members have explained the implications. of national security for the economy. Now I turn to the speed and the risks we can anticipate. Let's learn from the past. 2014, 2019, we saw different issues. External forces tried to dig up issues. In 2012, national education, and then 2016, the Mong Kok riots, 2019, the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance. Every time those incidents blew up, external forces tried to dig up incidents. And then the government stuck to the old ways and became ossified. That meant the government was too slow to adapt. And there's a person with a surname Tai. He came up with 10 steps to mutual destruction. This man tried to attack our legal system and government departments to pressurize the central authorities. They had an entire plan, a sham bills committee, training in the use of force, riots, forcing the central authorities' hand. Let's learn from the past. We cannot repeat the same mistakes. The earlier we get the bill through, the sooner we mitigate the risks. There is necessity and urgency in this bill. I support my firm support for the bill. I thank the central authorities. Every time when Hong Kong is in its hour of need, politically or economically, the central authorities lend its helping hand. I hope everyone in Hong Kong can remember that help. I so submit. Dr. David Lam.
Thank you, Deputy President. I speak in support of the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. China is a country, a major power with a very long history. We have witnessed the unification and separation of the country. We have seen hundreds of years where the country was caught in warring states, and there were also turmoil in various dynasties, and also invasion by foreign powers, and also the warring warlords. Whenever there is instability, there would be carving up of territory, death of people, and loss of property. Only when there is national security can we protect the life and properties of the people and ensure development interests. As a result, national security has an overriding importance. 5 years ago, we have experienced a catastrophe. Railways, airports, roads were damaged or blocked. Courtrooms, police stations, electrical were vandalized or occupied. Now, mainland students who study in Hong Kong had to evacuate under the protection of the police. Foreign nationals or mainlanders were attacked. Now, on the streets, we saw slogans asking for the U.S. Army to lead the way. It highlights the gap of national security. We lack a dedicated piece of legislation to safeguarding national security. After the promulgation of the Hong Kong LSL, we are returning to peace. Now we need a comprehensive set of law to protect national security. This is an overdue homework we have yet to complete. Now, in the contemporary world, in modern countries, there are usually national security legislations to protect national security, protecting the country from infiltration by foreign elements and also from internal disruption. I don't see why Hong Kong can be an exception. The legislative process of the bill has been detailed, highly efficient, and there are well-defined interpretation for terminologies like international organization and so on. Now, the purpose of the bill is to suppress, prevent, and punish national security offenses. Security is the cornerstone of a good life. With stability, we can engage in medical healthcare reform. We can deploy resources to train up doctors and nurses so that they can serve without worries. This is also the foundation for medical science development. Under this term of the government, as well as the hard work of the Bills Committee, we are now debating on the second reading of the bill. Now, this is a foundation for Hong Kong's return to stability and prosperity. I support the bill because I love my country, I love my home. This is the historical task upon our shoulder. I support the bill. Let's pass the bill as soon as possible and protect the country and our home. Dr. Dennis Lam, Deputy President. At last, today, we are able to debate Article 23 in the chamber. This is 27 years overdue. Finally, we are rising up to the cause in 528's decision and also the Hong Kong NSR. Being involved in the legislative process of Article 23 is my honor. This is also the historic mission for this term of LegCo members. Let's turn over a new page for Hong Kong. Legislation for Article 23 is how we are upholding our constitutional obligation. It is also how we can uphold national safety as well as ensure the prosperity of the country in Hong Kong. After decades of consideration and discussion, especially after 2014 and 2019, the public appreciates more the importance of national security, and there is wide consensus on the legislation. The consensus is as soon as possible. In the two sessions, President Xi mentioned that we have to grasp the prioritized mission of high-quality development. We have to consider the local characteristics in boosting productivity. We have to seize the trend in economic development and enhance confidence in society. Rule of law and national security are the key attractions for international and mainland investors. Article 23 legislation will remove these elements of anxiety and boost investment confidence by creating a highly efficient and safe investment environment. It will promote Hong Kong's integration into the national development blueprint so that we can seize the opportunity of high-quality development. The Bills Committee on Safeguarding National Security Bill spent 7 days to call hundreds of meetings and spent 50 hours on scrutinizing each clause of the bill. In the process, we saw how diligent and how efficient the Council was. It rises up to the aspiration of the public. It also showcased the commitments to upholding national security by the government. The answers given by the administration alleviated the concerns in the public. It is common practice to legislate for national security issues. For example, Singapore, Japan, the US, the UK, there are a large number of laws. And apparently, in some jurisdictions, their laws are harsher than ours. There are at least 21 similar legislations in the US, 14 for the UK, and 9 for Canada, and 2 for New Zealand. And for Asian countries, Singapore has 6 pieces of legislation in national security. This is how they make use of law to suppress and punish national security offenses. This is a common sense. Article 23 has an impact on the future of Hong Kong. It is also important for our long-term development strategy. It is a boost of confidence for our development. It also embodies the spirit of human rights and freedom. Now, with that, we can scale new heights under one country, 2 systems, because we can refocus our energy on improving livelihood and economy and add to the sense of gains and happiness of the people here. I support the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Mr. Rock Chen, Thank you, Deputy President. I speak in support of the passage of the Safeguarding National Security Bill and the various amendments. Fulfilling our constitutional duty in upholding national security is important for the success of one country, two systems. Some question, with the promulgation of the Hong Kong NSL, is it still necessary to engage in local enactments of Article 23? The answer is positive. The earlier, the better. Article 23 upholds the highest principle of one country, two systems. For the 5 national security offences not yet covered by the Hong Kong NSL, the bill will address these offences. It is compatible with the Hong Kong NSL. Together with Article 23 and the Hong Kong NSL, the law will plug the gap in national security, and this is the final piece of puzzle. It aligns with the common law practice. In the drafting process, the government has made reference to Western countries which have a history of national security legislation. These countries include the US, the UK, and Australia. Combining their experience and our actual circumstances, relevant offences are added. This will meet our local needs while aligning with international practice. It is a civilized approach in legislation to protect freedom and liberties. Now, the entire process is careful and transparent. The government has listened to the questions and views put forward by the public and council members. Answers were given and clarifications were made. In the end, 91 amendments were moved to cater for the aspirations of the public. A balance has been struck. It shows good communication and the democratic process. The objective of the bill is to protect the safety of the country and Hong Kong. It only targets a minority which endanger national security. The conviction threshold is high. The innocent will not be caught. The legislation will ensure long-term prosperity of the territory. Upon implementation of the legislation, it will not dampen investment sentiments by international investors. On the contrary, it will create a favorable environment for foreign investors to invest in Hong Kong. Their freedom and their property will be safeguarded. After the passage of the law, we will refocus our energy on economic development by showcasing our positions under the National 14th Five-Year Plan. We will pursue high-quality growth. This is a new era. I am confident in the future. I so submit I staunchly support the bill and the amendments.
Mr. Dominic Lee.
At this historical juncture, let's take a moment here to ponder a fundamental question. Why must we step forward today to fortify our city with this national security law? Is it just a task handed to us because of our constitutional duty? Or is it our calling, our mission that speaks to the heart of what truly defines Hong Kong? In 2019, influenced by foreign entities, rioters took it to the streets. They caused damage. They vandalized railways. They blocked major roads. And they even stormed this ferry chamber in order to force the government to meet the demands. When the average citizens who disagreed with the rioters' demands stood up against them, those citizens were beaten up. They were burned alive. Then they were even stoned to death. People of Hong Kong lived in fear for almost 2 years. Now, as lawmakers, can we allow the fabric of our society to remain at risk from such turmoil? The answer is no. We cannot. And indeed, we will not let that happen again. Let's not forget, national security laws are not something that's unique to Hong Kong. They are a global standard and a crucial element of any society that holds dear its peace and its people's safety. Because if people don't feel safe speaking their mind,
How can we truly lay claim to the freedom soul we cherish? And without the assurance of safety, how can the virtue of democracy even begin to thrive? Madam President, that is why I find it so hypocritical when Western politicians like Chris Patton and David Cameron criticize our legislation while turning a blind eye to similar, more severe laws in our own country, like the National Security Act that was enacted just last July. And its ally, the United States, even has more than 20 pieces of legislation that are related to national security. So why is it okay for the US and the UK to have their own security laws, but it's not okay for China and Hong Kong to have ours? Why is it that only Western countries deserve to keep the country safe, but not other nations? And to those who criticize the pace of this legislation, I say, look, in the aftermath of 9/11 in 2001, the United States enacted the Patriot Act, a law that granted unprecedented powers to law enforcement agencies within only 3 days. 3 days. And yet during that time, why didn't we see Time Magazine, Bloomberg, nor The Economist write about the legislative process being hasty? And why didn't we see Stephen Roach having any problem with the fact that the Congress passed the legislation with virtually no debate? Isn't that an obvious double standard? Madam President, as we stand on the brink of enacting the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance today, let us embrace this milestone with conviction. This law is set to complete Hong Kong's national security framework, shield our beloved city, and enable us to pour our heart and soul into what we cherish the most, our economy, the happiness of our people, and unshakable stability that will be the envy of the world. For isn't it the dream of every person here today to witness a Hong Kong that stands resilient and filled with hope? Isn't it the dream of every person in this chamber here today that we can shape the future of our city with our own hands, drawing strength from our collective resolve? And isn't it the dream of every person here today that we stand in this historical moment knowing that protecting our city's safety and wealth is more than our responsibility, but it's our burning desire? Madam President, now is the time, Hong Kong, to decide our fate, to unite as one, and to declare boldly to the world that we are prepared for what's next, and that next starts right here and right now. With our unity and this new law, we will advance with courage. We will leap forward with determination. We will turn every obstacle into stepping stone. We will make Hong Kong reach new heights. We will build a proud legacy for generations to come. Thank you, and may God bless our beautiful nation.
Mr. Frankie Yik. Madam President, I speak in support of this bill. This is the Safeguarding National Security Bill. From members who have spoken, they've put forward a lot of invaluable views, so I'm not going to repeat them here. On behalf of the transport sector, I'd like to put forward our views on the matter. I suppose we all have fresh in our minds what happened in 2019. The transport sector bore the brunt. Roads were blocked. So in the end, drivers couldn't get the job done. It was a great inconvenience to members of the public as well. Public transport drivers were beaten up. They were the innocent ones. Drivers were deterred to come to work, or they worked in fear. Some public transport vehicles were vandalized. Some were set ablaze. Insurance companies would not pay out because of damage caused by riots. The public transport owners would need to bear the costs. Now, for taxis and minivans in Hong Kong, they were mostly operated by individual owners. They struggled to make ends meet as well. Now, with the restructuring of the public transport system, they have their market share is getting ever smaller. And because of the black-clad riot, they couldn't even rely on the the public transport vehicles to make a living. When your life and your property were at stake, how could you make a living? The transport sector, in light of what happened in 2019, would give our full support to the bill so as to give Hong Kong a stable and safe business environment. We were once called one of the 4 Asian tigers. Our economic development proceeded rapidly, but because of different problems such as filibustering in the council, as well as bickering in society, black-clad riot in 2019 and COVID-19 pandemic, our economy had come to a standstill. Even the electoral complex was heavily vandalized to the extent that we could not hold council meetings here. The chief executive has said that we should complete this legislation as quickly as possible so as to focus on economic development. The Liberal Party is all for this statement. In order to do that, we should complete legislation as quickly as possible to ensure stability and prosperity in Hong Kong. Legislating on Article 23 is not something evil. It targets a minority of elements. There are similar laws enacted in other jurisdictions. In fact, we've made reference to the laws in other countries. We drawn up the bill in light of the circumstances in Hong Kong. This bill does not target the ordinary members of the public, but those with ulterior motive have spread misleading news and rumors about the bill. So after passage of the bill, the government should further publicize and educate the public about the details. The rebuttal team should maintain its operation for longer so as to dispel rumors and address misunderstandings. I thank the 15 members of the Bills Committee and the Legislative Council Secretariat for the tireless efforts during the marathon meetings so that this bill could be examined expeditiously. I support the early passage of the bill. I also support the second, third reading as well as passage of the bill. Mr. Holden Chow.
I fully support the passage of the bill today, the enactment of laws under Article 23 legislation. I am deeply honored to be a member of the Bills Committee for the Safeguarding National Security Bill. As the chairman of the Bills Committee, Mr. Martin Liao rightly pointed out, the Bills Committee indeed cautiously and diligently scrutinized the bill. For almost 50 hours, we have raised more than 1,000 queries. We do cover many meaningful questions, and I'm so impressed by, first, the tremendous effort made by the government team working round the clock in preparing for the draft bill and addressing us in the course of the meetings. Second, we did offer our opinion to the government as regards a wide range of provisions, including, say, the full coverage of prosecution and public officers dealing with cases concerning national security to protect them from doxing and threatening. We appreciate the government rightly taking on board our opinion and make appropriate amendments swiftly. This actually showcases our decent interactions between the government and LegCo, as well as the spirit of good governance. Like many of you here, I do notice there have been a lot of falsehoods and smearing maliciously made by foreign governments, politicians, and Western pundits. And I think it's time for us to refute their groundless accusations and set the record straight. First, make no mistake, for the offense of external interference, the use of improper means including coercion or threatening must be proved. So normal communications and activities do not constitute any offense, which is enough to address concerns from international community. Second, unlike what the United Kingdom does in their National Security Act 2023, we don't do polygraph tests. Yes, guys, you hear me. Polygraph tests. In the United Kingdom, the government has a right to demand a person to receive polygraph tests. We don't do that in Hong Kong. Third, for the extension of detention, in some foreign countries like Singapore, under their Internal Security Act, the Singapore government is able to impose an order for detention of not exceeding 2 years without obtaining approval from court. Whereas in our bill, our Hong Kong police must strictly follow the rules to apply to court for obtaining approval for detention. not more than 14 days in total. Our independent judiciary always vet the application to avoid abuse of the system. In the United States, there is so-called FARA, which is the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which stipulates a strict registration system to monitor activities of foreign agents. Likewise, the United Kingdom introduced similar draconian registration system for any foreign power institutions and entities. In Hong Kong, we don't do such registration system. Last but not least, under our view, for the offense of theft of state secret, the government has embraced the opinion from public and introduced the public interest defense, which rightly strikes a balance between safeguarding national security and public's right to know. Bearing in mind that such a public interest defense is not even expressly included in the National Security Act 2023 in the United Kingdom. In this connection, we attach more importance to freedom of press and human rights than the UK government does. For all the above, it is crystal clear that our Article 23 legislation is more lenient than many other foreign countries. Our legislation strictly complies with human rights practice and international laws. Any ill-intentioned moves by foreign governments attempting to obstruct the passage of the bill will be doomed to fail. We have been waiting for more than 20-odd years to discharge our constitutional duty to legislate for Article 23. Our unwavering commitment to safeguarding our national security are supported by the vast majority of Hong Kong people, people from all walks of life. You may note from the 13,000 pieces of submissions received by the government at the end of the public consultation. The U.S. Consul General in Hong Kong falsely accused of Article 23 legislation and even called for release of Jimmy Lai, trampling our rule of law. The more they do on smearing our Article 23 legislation, the more we perceive the imminent need to improve our safeguarding national security system, to keep malicious foreign interference, espionage, and sabotage at bay. We all recall the chaos back in 2019. That is enough to explain the need to safeguard our national security. Upon the passage of the bill today, we can focus on developing our economy. The safer we are, the better our economy. Thank you, Madam President.
朱國強議員。多謝主席。本人同教聯。
Mr. Chu Kuo-kang. Thank you. The Federation of Education Workers and I support legislating for Article 23, which is our constitutional duty. We saw the unlawful Occupy Central movement and then the 2019 riots. We know the harm such threats can do. Many teachers and students were incited. They were incited to engage in violent acts trying to cause secession. And then those people paid a heavy price. After 2019, the education sector learned that we need to keep our country safe before we can keep our home safe. So the education sector worked hard on raising national security awareness and enhancing a sense of national identity. At different levels of schooling, new joiners among the teachers need to pass the basic law test and the national security law test. This bill converges with the national security law. The two laws will work together. They will go hand in hand. For this bill, the government has looked at overseas laws. This bill has widespread support. The presidents of many universities openly stated their support for the bill. They also acknowledged the necessity of this bill. This bill will not cause any adverse effect on overseas recruitment or academic exchanges. We need national security before prosperity can follow. I hope that the government can work on education, on national security after the bill is passed, with a focus on teachers and students. After the bill is passed, we will have a complete legal system for keeping our country safe. We need an education that can also keep up. We need national security education that's easy to follow, that gets the message across. And we also need a targeted approach to train the teachers so that they know about national security and how to teach it to students. Deputy President, on behalf of the education sector, I express my support for the bill. I so submit. Dr. Frankie Ngan. Deputy President, I support the Safeguarding National Security Bill. This bill will help us cope with the current and future national security risks. This bill also closes a loophole in national security. We're also implementing the NPC decision on May 28th. We're also discharging our constitutional duty. This bill strikes a balance between national security and the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong residents. This bill will help foster our economy and good for our long-term prosperity and enduring success of one country, two systems. Since this legislative exercise started, I have been gauging views. I shared my thoughts with the residents of Kowloon East. I talked to residents about the contents of the bill. Many people told me we had the 2014 incident and then the 2019 riots. People saw the harm and the threat that came out of national security threat. Rioters caused extensive damage to Hong Kong. They damaged MTR stations, bus stops, traffic lights, and the airport. People could not travel. Malls had to close. There were class suspensions in 2019. People's lives were seriously disrupted. We need national security before development can happen. 2019 was a painful lesson. From that episode, people have learned the importance of national security. Nobody wants to see the recurrence of those riots. Nobody wants to see any more infighting. We need to focus on the economy and deliver a better life for people. Without plugging the national security loophole, there will be people exploiting that. So there is urgency in getting this bill through. Geopolitics is getting more complex. There is necessity and urgency in this bill. We are reaching the home stretch. The sooner we get the bill through, the sooner we mitigate the national security risks, and then we can fulfill our constitutional duty. We close the loophole, and then we can focus on the economy and improve people's lives. I so submit, Deputy President. Mr. Edward Leung.
President, today we are here to discuss the National Security Law Bill, a critical piece of legislation under Article 23. I am truly honored to express my unwavering support for this bill. The need for national security legislation in Hong Kong has become abundantly clear, especially in the wake of the destructive riots that unfolded in 2019. These events have served as a stark reminder of the grave consequences that can arise when the security of a nation is uncompromised. It is our solemn duty to ensure the safety of our beloved city. During the consultation stage of Article 23, we witnessed an overwhelming surge of support from our local community. The people of Hong Kong have recognized the importance of national security legislation. However, it saddens me to see certain international media outlets propagating biased narratives and attempting to undermine the legitimacy of Article 23 and instilling fear among the public. It is necessary to underscore that the preservation of national security is a global imperative, with numerous countries having enacted their own national security laws to protect their interests and ensure the well-being of their citizens. Hong Kong is no exception. The enactment of our own national security legislation is vital to the prosperity of our beloved city. I understand that some citizens may have concerns regarding the impact of these legislations on Hong Kong's international perception. However, it is important to note that the foreign chambers of commerce, despite political differences, wholeheartedly agree with the necessity for Hong Kong to take decisive legislative action. National security laws are commonplace around the world, and foreign businesses are used to operating within such legal frameworks. They understand that this action will foster a secure and stable environment for business and investment. In conclusion, the National Security Law Bill will contribute to the prosperity and well-being of our beloved city. I'm honored to express my wholehearted support for this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Kingsley Wong, Deputy President. As a member in the 7th-term Legislative Council, it is my greatest honor to participate in the legislative work for Article 23. This is a task imposed on us 27 years ago. I feel the gravity of the mission. I thank the BC members and the Secretariat for engaging in a marathon scrutiny process. For all the concerns and unclear parts, the governments have made clarification. For the constructive amendments, they are incorporated into the bill. This is a high-quality process for scrutinizing the bill. Having experienced the 2019 Colour Revolution trauma, we all understand the necessity and urgency of national security. With no country, there is no home. With no national security, there is no one country, two systems, and the long-term prosperity we enjoy. If you look at the Middle East and other places at war, people are driven out of their home and their safety are at risk. So this highlights the importance of national security. This is the cornerstone for a life and a career. Now, we appreciate the law drafting process. The DOJ has made reference to the relevant common law jurisdiction like Singapore, Canada, and the US, and adapted the law to suit the reality in Hong Kong. Now, under the Basic Law, the International Covenant on Civil Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the rights and liberties in terms of society and speech and publication enshrined in these covenants are all upheld. The government has struck a balance between national security and personal freedom. It is an effective piece of law. Now, since the gazetting of the bill, external forces, foreign governments, and even absconders have been calling for sanctions on the relevant officials. It just highlighted the urgency to legislate for national security. We have to keep our defense up and focus on economic development. I so submit. Mr. Portier. Deputy President, finally, this is the last mile. I'm thankful to all the members, some 80 of them, who have spoken before me. They have painted a comprehensive picture. Now, 3 members spoke in Putonghua, and another 6 members spoke in English. Now, for those who speak Putonghua, English, or Cantonese, everyone can understand the policy intent of Article 23 and also the support behind the bill. I am no exception. Now, this bill is unique in that we have never legislated in this pace. It's not about time. We have spent a lot of hours on scrutinizing the bill, but the pace is unprecedented. Was there a particular reason? Now, the official story is as soon as possible, as early as possible. Now, from the central people's government's point of view, they look at the matter from a different altitude, so there must be a reason. So the nation has been breaking away from the pace set by the Western hegemonies. We can choose our own pace. So I think this pace we have chosen was necessary. So in the future, we may have a clearer understanding on why this pace is necessary. Deputy President, many members have taken different perspectives in debating the bill. They include Mr. Holden Chow, Doreen Kong, Mr. Ambrose Lam. They have shed light on the bill by comparing the bill with national security laws in other common law jurisdictions. It is reassuring for the Hong Kong citizen. Every time when we have a new piece of law, we would ask, what about the UK, the US, and even Singapore? How do they do it? Every country, every jurisdiction has their own needs. Now, we are now confident enough to avoid relying too much on other jurisdictions' legislation in terms of punishments and the details. We have a successful common law system. Now, for those who have read the judgments rendered by our judges in details, and for every legal professional, they would understand that the integrity of rule of law in Hong Kong has been upheld, and we are adhering to the common law traditions that we were blessed with. Now, as Michael Tian said, this is just the beginning. More importantly, like Mr. Perry, you said, we have to focus on explaining the law to the public and also how we can ensure that the legal sector can keep up. And in terms of our courts, we have to ensure that the judges can rule on national security cases by upholding the common law tradition with confidence. If you look at several cases in recent times, for example, the Tam Tak Chi case, and also the Tong Yin Kit case, you would see how careful our judges have been. Under unprecedented pressure, they have done a good job in interpreting the case law and adhering to the common law tradition. In an unprecedented manner, they have jammed together two systems perfectly, and the results were admirable. It gave us confidence. After the passage of the bill, we can put down our burdens. Back in 2014, we had the Occupy Central movement. At the time, I was at the forefront. I was involved in the injunction order. Now, I was the chairman of the Bills Committee of the extradition bill, but in the end, the Bills Committee was foiled. Now, we don't have to explain again why we need national security law. Now, let's unite together and show the world that we need this piece of law. It is necessary. Let's work together to scale new heights. Thank you.
Does any other member in the chamber who hasn't yet spoken? So all members have spoken. I now call upon the Secretary for Security to reply, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary. Thank you, President. First of all, I would like to thank all members of the Council for speaking in the debate, because in your speech you have been unreservedly supporting the bill. The SAR government launched a public consultation exercise on legislating for Article 23 of the Basic Law at the end of January. In the 2 months that followed, the Legislative Council, LESCO, the SAR government, members of the public and all sectors in the community worked hard together. Finally, we are resuming the second reading of the Safeguarding National Security Bill, the bill. The purpose of this legislation is to fulfill our constitutional duty as required under Article 23 of the Basic Law, the decision of the National People's Congress on establishing and improving the legal system and enforcement mechanisms for the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region to safeguard national security, that's the 528 decision, and the Hong Kong National Security Law, NSL, to implement the Article 23 of the Basic Law. This is an important milestone for the full and accurate implementation of one country, two systems of the SAR. Here, allow me to first express my gratitude to Mr. Martin Lau, Chairman of the Bills Committee on Safeguarding National Security Bill, and all BC members as well as the Secretary and Legal Advisor of LegCo for their relentless effort in the past week. The BC held 22 meetings in a matter of 7 days. These were 44 hours of intensive meetings. Counting also the meetings of the subcommittee to study matters relating to Basic Law Article 23 legislation, there was a total of 50 hours of deliberations. The BC completed with great efficiency the scrutiny of the bill, which contains 181 clauses, including corresponding amendments to 28 ordinances in 67 clauses. The BC then reported to the House Committee on the 15th of March and expressed its support for the resumption of the second reading of the bill. The bill is the outcome of the concerted effort of all sectors in Hong Kong and is also the homework in relation to legislating for Article 23 that the SAR government has been striving hard to take forward. Since the implementation of the Hong Kong NSL, the SAR government has been actively preventing, suppressing, and punishing acts and activities that endanger national security in accordance with the Hong Kong NSL and by invoking existing laws. The SAR government has also been pressing ahead with the legislative exercise for Article 23 to come up with effective and practical legislative proposals. Apart from an effective response to past and present national security risks and threats, the bill seeks to be forward-looking to respond to other possible risks in the future. At the end, after considering the content, practical experience, and court rulings of Hong Kong NSL and other relevant laws on safeguarding national security, the relevant laws and implementation experience of our country and other countries, as well as the actual circumstances of Hong Kong in recent years, the SAR government formulated the legislative proposal for Article 23 of the Basic Law. We also launched a public consultation exercise from the 30th of January to the 20th of February this year. During the public consultation, Secretary for Justice, myself, and other relevant officials conducted close to 30 briefing sessions to explain the proposal to different sectors. We appeared in various media interviews and distributed over 25,000 copies of the consultation documents and publicity leaflet. We also publicized other materials and information through various channels, including the media, in the hope of helping the public to grasp the proposal and give their views. We received over 13,000 submissions from the public consultation. 98.6% of the submissions expressed support and put forward positive views. This is testimony to the strong and real public support for the legislation and the realization of the public of the importance of this task to safeguard national security. During and after the consultation, the Security Bureau SB and the Department of Justice DOJ worked non-stop and at full speed to analyze and consider views collected and completed the drafting of the bill. The bill was gazetted and introduced to LegCo on the 8th of March. The bill has more than 180 clauses to put in place a precise and comprehensive legislation for implementing the requirements of Article 23, 528 decision and Hong Kong SAL. It is a bill that allows effective response to situations that the Hong Kong SAR may face now and in the future. The bill is also a response to the aspirations of the public for a law to safeguard national security. The bill, if passed and enacted, will ensure convergence, compatibility and complementarity with Hong Kong NSL. Together, they will form a complete legal system to safeguard national security. Since our reunification more than 26 years ago, there is finally a complete overhaul of the legal system to safeguard national security in the SAR. The SAR government fully appreciates the wish of the public to safeguard national security. At the same time, they are concerned if the legislation may affect their rights and freedoms. The bill has catered fully to the concerns of the public. First, the preamble of the bill stresses that it is a must to protect the lawful rights and interests of the residents of the Hong Kong SAR and other people in the SAR. It is also a must to ensure the property and investment in the SAR are protected by the law. In the preliminary of the bill, the principles of the ordinance are clearly stated. There is special emphasis on respecting and protecting human rights in accordance with the law, including the rights and freedoms enjoyed under the Basic Law, the provisions of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights as applied to Hong Kong. There must also be adherence to the principle of the rule of law in preventing, suppressing and punishing acts and activities endangering national security. This will then give peace of mind to the public. The bill adopts the conventional drafting approach in line with the common law system. For some key and important terms and concepts, there are detailed definitions to spell out clearly the elements of the various offences. That includes actus reus and mens rea, such as intention, knowledge, recklessness, etc. There are also appropriate exceptions and defence provisions. This is to ensure a targeted response to acts and activities endangering national security. Law-abiding citizens will not be caught by the law inadvertently. It should be noted that many of the offences in the bill are based on existing offences. The bill aims only to refine and improve these offences. In some cases, the penalties for offences endangering national security are increased for a stronger deterrent effect. Apart from stating offences clearly, the bill also provides for powers of enforcement, judicial proceedings and other legal systems for safeguarding national security and measures of the enforcement mechanisms. All powers, procedures and measures have been carefully considered and formulated. There are specific provisions for specific conditions to be met before measures can be deployed, restrictions that may be imposed, and permission that needs to be sought by organs and agencies. Restrictions must be related to safeguarding national security, and the extent of restrictions must be such as necessary for safeguarding national security. On provisions related to court proceedings, the main purpose is that under the principle of ensuring a fair trial, the relevant cases could be heard in court as soon as possible. This is in line with the requirement of Article 43 of HK-NSL for a case to be handled in a fair and timely manner. The bill also gives better protection to defendants on their right to a fair trial by judicial organs without delay in accordance with Article 87 of the Basic Law. When we introduced the bill, we specifically included a document on the relationship between safeguarding national security and protecting human rights. It is annexed to the LegCo brief. The annex elaborates on how the proposed offences, various powers, procedures and measures fully comply with human rights protection under the Basic Law. The Safeguarding National Security Bill targets only a handful of organizations and individuals that endanger national security. It aims to effectively prevent, suppress, and punish unlawful acts that endanger national security. The bill aims to better protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals and ensure that properties and investment in the Hong Kong SAR are protected by the law. If national security is safeguarded, there will be a better business environment for businesses operating in Hong Kong. 98.6% of the views received during the public consultation expressed support and gave positive views in relation to the legislative exercise. We can see the legislative proposal is supported by the majority in the community. During the scrutiny of the bill, various sectors in the public expressed support for the bill. In different sectors, including major chambers of commerce, the legal profession, the media, youth sectors, other professional sectors and political parties all spoke up in support of the early passage of the bill. So there is strong consensus in the community for Article 23 legislation. It is what the people want. I must point out again, as we drop law to safeguard national security, this is the basic national policy of all countries around the world. Western countries such as the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, they all have legislation to safeguard national security. They have set up the relevant enforcement agencies. And then on the relevant legislation to safeguard national security for other countries, this is spelled out in detail in the consultation document. So the public are getting to understand more about it. And in the drafting process, we've also made reference to the relevant provisions in the national security legislation in other common law jurisdictions. We make sure that our practice is consistent with that of other common law jurisdictions. Of course, we are not copying words from words. We have carefully considered the actual circumstances of Hong Kong. We have looked at the experience overseas as we draft a bill that best suits Hong Kong. Now, on the content of the bill, we're proposing to enact a new safeguarding national security ordinance. The Hong Kong NSL already has provisions covering secession and subversion. So therefore, we are not duplicating legislation on these two offences. For other acts prohibited under Article 23, that is treason, sedition, theft of state secrets, prohibition of foreign political organizations and bodies from conducting political activities in the SAR, and prohibition of SAR political organizations and bodies from establishing ties with foreign political organizations or bodies. All these offences are covered in the bill. At the same time, the bill has regard to the actual needs of the SAR. We have also made reference to the experience of other jurisdictions, and then we have included some new offences in the bill. For example, sabotage, endangering national security, doing acts endangering national security in relation to computers or electronic systems, and external interference, endangering national security, and so on. So these offences are to make sure that we could meet the actual needs of Hong Kong in safeguarding national security. Here, I must stress again, there are several offences of concern to the public. Offences relating to seditious intention that I have stressed many times. Anti-China forces are resorting to various means to incite hatred against the fundamental system of the country and the central and SAR authorities. They also distort legal viewpoints to glorify violence, and then subconsciously they try to undermine people's awareness of abiding by the law. This is to sow the seeds or provide the soil for sowing the seeds for the Hong Kong edition of Colour Revolution. These are seditious acts and publications. Of course, not every time they directly incite people to disrupt public order or use violence, but if we leave these acts be, then over time, there will be more violence and unlawful acts in the community, and then we will suffer turbulence and instability. The position of the SL government is, as pointed out in the bill, that there is no need to prove the intention of someone to incite others to disrupt public order for offences relating to seditious intention. As for state secrets, that we have specific provisions on the elements that will constitute the offence. The prosecution has to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant has a relevant mens rea and actus reus before a person can be convicted by the court. For organizations engaging in normal business or providing professional service as regulated, they will not be caught inadvertently by the law. As for offences related to state secrets, the information must fall under one of the 7 categories stated in the bill. And then there must also be the element of a disclosure without lawful authority and the element of a likelihood of endangering national security. And then the person must have knowledge or in committing the offence, or he has the intention of endangering national security. So we have to prove all these points. If someone does not know that the information he discloses is state secrets and he has no intention to endanger national security, he won't be caught by the law. On external interference endangering national security. If someone collaborates with foreign forces and engages in improper means to influence the functions of the SAO government, the legislature, and the judicial organ, and that will sabotage and that will prejudice the sovereignty and political independence of a country, thereby endangering national security. Such acts are apparently different from normal international exchanges, including exchanges in areas such as commerce, academics, and culture, conducted in line with the principles of sovereign equality and non-interference under national law. To highlight the nature of endangering national security of the offence of external interference, and upon review, we propose to rename the offence as the offence of external interference endangering national security, with the elements of the offence remaining unchanged. Now, for an organization that meets the definition of external force, if the body does not engage in any unlawful acts that would not be an offense, and there's no prohibition of connection or establishing ties with that organization. Therefore, normal exchanges will not be affected. External interference endangering national security offence requires the meeting of 3 conditions before there's a chance of it being an offence. 1 is collaborating with external forces. 2, the use of improper means, for example, misrepresentation of facts, use of force, threatening someone's property, or damaging someone's reputation. The 3rd condition is with the intention to bring about interference effect. For example, influencing the legislature and the courts in performing the functions or interfering with elections in Hong Kong. Now, apart from these offences, we want to make sure that the SAR could implement the 528 decision requirements and also the NSL requirements and duties, apart from legislating from Article 23, so that we could improve the legal system for safeguarding national security and as well as the enforcement mechanisms. So in the bill, we also have other provisions in relation to enforcement powers and court proceedings. This is to improve the legal systems and address the shortcomings in the enforcement mechanisms. Now, on enforcement powers and court proceedings in relation to safeguarding national security, the bill brings in items such as if there's need to investigate into offences endangering national security, we may apply to the court for extension of detention. Or we could also, for the same reason, we could apply to the court for imposing restrictions on the consultation of lawyers. And then to prevent or investigate national security offences, we may apply to the court to impose restrictions on persons on bail. There's also measures to improve the criminal proceedings for offences related to national security. And we want to crack down on deter and prevent abscondment. So there are relevant law enforcement and court proceedings to cause the abscondees to return, then to receive trial and so on. And so prohibition against certain activities in connection with immovable properties and prohibition in connection with joint ventures or partnership with relevant absconders. Now, if an innocent third party enters into contract agreement or obligation with abscondee before that person becomes an abscondee, then the innocent third party may be regarded as having contravened the offence. So that's why I will be moving amendments. So for the 2 provisions, there will be exceptions to give protection to the third party. The third party won't be regarded as having contravened the provisions simply because they have entered into contract agreement or obligation with the abscondee before the person becomes an abscondee. And on the mechanism to safeguard national security, the bill gives powers to the chief executive to issue administrative instructions to public servants. This is to require public servants to give all such assistance as necessary for the work of safeguarding national security. And for the better implementation of Article 47 of the NSL, that is the certification system by the Chief Executive. The Chief Executive may issue certificate relating to a question of whether there is national security or state secrets involved, or whether or not proceedings have been commenced. And then some members believe that the bill should make reference to other ordinances. The Chief Executive in Council should be empowered to make subsidiary legislation on safeguarding national security. This is to make further provisions for reference national security laws, that is the Hong Kong SA, NSL and this interpretation, and the actual implementation of the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance. This will allow us to respond to unforeseeable circumstances in future. Some members believe that one of the purposes of enacting a new Safeguarding National Security Ordinance is to fully fulfill our constitutional duties as required under 528 decision and the Hong Kong NSL. And then the Standing Committee of the NPC gave an interpretation of Articles 14 and 47 of the Hong Kong SL on the 30th of December 2022, but such interpretation has not been fully reflected in local legislation. Therefore, these requirements should be incorporated into the bill. This is to ensure that if Hong Kong laws give powers to certain persons in performing certain functions, and when these persons perform the functions or make any decisions regarding those functions, they must respect the judgments and decisions of the National Security Committee in accordance with the law. After review, we believe the two proposals are appropriate and acceptable. We will therefore propose amendments to include these provisions. On empowering the Chief Executive in Council to make subsidiary legislation to safeguard national security, while these amendments have caused some concern to the community, and some deliberately try to discredit this amendment. But so I must make a clarification here. In fact, a legislature may empower an executive to make subsidiary legislation for the better carrying out of the principal legislation. This is an established practice under the common law system. The UK, the US, and other common law jurisdictions have similar practices. Now, for the full implementation of measures to safeguard national security, that means there is need to empower the executive to formulate detailed measures and administrative measures. And then national security risk may come all at a sudden. They cannot be foreseen. So if we empower the Chief Executive in Council to make subsidiary legislation, to formulate detailed implementation measures on the Hong Kong NSL, its interpretation, and the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance, is actually necessary. This is an effective way to implement the national security mechanism, safeguarding mechanism, and to prevent and neutralize any possible risks. Now, subsidiary legislation must be formulated in accordance with the principal legislation. It cannot go beyond the scope of matters regulated under the principal legislation. And also, subsidiary legislation is subject to negative vetting by the legislature. The legislature may pass resolution to amend or repeal the subsidiary legislation. Now, on advice or direction on matters related to national security education, Article 10 of the NSL provides that the SAR shall raise awareness of Hong Kong residents of national security and of the obligation to abide by the law. Members are of the view that to ensure that this requirement is properly implemented, the bill should empower the Chief Secretary for Administration as chair of the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee to give direction to any person whom the Chief Secretary considers appropriate for the public communication guidance, supervision, and regulation of national security education. Details will be included in the CSA. We're going to move in due course. Apart from offences and enforcement powers, procedures and measures. Members are very concerned about the disclosure of personal data of officers handling national security cases. Some members are of the view that under certain circumstances, officers handling national security cases may also be doxed. Although those cases do not concern national security, a party to the case may be a defendant of a case concerning national security. Hence, there is a need to provide greater protection to persons handling national security cases that involve defendants of national security cases. Therefore, I will move an amendment to clause 111, that is, public servants, counsel, or solicitor representing their respective departments, authorities, or law firms signing legal documents in respect of cases concerning national security. The scope will be expanded to cover cases in which the party to the case is a defendant involved in a national security case. I will also propose to add a provision. Specified court may, on application, take anonymity measures and an offence relating to order prohibiting the disclosure of identity. The details are set out in the amendment. From the examples I quoted above, you can see that the Bills Committee scrutinized the bill with great care. In fact, the Bills Committee worked overtime to consider the bill. Members asked more than 1,000 questions, and for some of the clauses, more than an hour was spent on each of them. So definitely the BC considered the bill most carefully. On the policy intent, criminal elements, definition, human rights protection and implementation details and other issues, members have in-depth discussion on each and every clause in this respect. They've put forward many valuable views, and many of them are good ones that should be adopted. So I will be proposing 91 amendments in the committee stage to amend a part of the bill. I will be explaining the details later. The amendments and the committee stage amendments of the bill have been supported by the Bills Committee. Here, I would like to thank members and all sectors in the committee again for their support of the Article 23 legislation. Hong Kong needs to formulate a comprehensive safeguarding national security law system that includes offences, enforcement powers, procedures and measures. This will ensure the full and accurate implementation of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people, administering Hong Kong, and high degree of autonomy. This will allow one country systems to sail far and successfully. Then it will also consolidate our rule of law basis. Then the government could turn its focus to economic development and work together with the community on that. And then we could improve people's livelihood, and there will be a safe and happy home for all to live and work in. President, I move the second reading of the Safeguarding National Security Bill. I ask members to support the second reading of the bill and also the amendments I'm going to move later on. And I hope you will give your full support to the enactment of the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance so that we could complete the exercise on our legislative exercise. Thank you.
I now put the question to you that the Safeguarding National Security Bill be read the second time. Will those in favour please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Safeguarding National Security Bill. This Council now becomes Committee of the Whole Council to consider the Safeguarding National Security Bill. Members may refer to the appendix to the script for the debate and voting arrangements for the bill. Members have been informed that the committee will conduct a joint debate on the clauses and amendments, including amendments to headings and new clauses. I now propose the question to you that the following clauses stand part of the bill. Clauses 1 to 181. Secretary for Security will move amendments to amend a number of clauses and headings and add new clauses. Members may refer to the appendix to the script for details of the amendments. Members may now proceed to a joint debate on the clauses and amendments.
I will first call upon the Secretary for Security to speak, but he is not required to move the amendments at this stage. Then I will call upon members to speak. Upon the conclusion of the joint debate, the committee will first vote on the clauses with no amendments standing part of the bill, and then deal with the amendments according to the arrangement set out in the appendix to the script. Secretary for Security. Chairman, the 91 amendments to be moved by the government are made in response to the views made by Bills Committee members. The Bills Committee has indicated its support for the amendments. I'll now briefly explain the 20 policy areas involved in the amendments and their purposes. First, the bill includes an exhaustive list of public officers subject to incitement under the offense of disaffection. We propose to add a provision so that the Chief Executive in Council may specify persons of certain categories as public officers subject to incitement in respect of the offense. The specification will be made by way of subsidiary legislation. The purpose of the provision is that for officers of public bodies considered to be of significance to the security or material interest of the Hong Kong SAR, whose disaffection may lead to security risks, the Chief Executive in Council may specify these persons as public officers not to be subject to incitement. This will prohibit any person from inciting these officers to abandon upholding the basic law and allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR. Second, certain offences and the heavier punishment in relation to state secrets only apply to the public officers set out in the bill. A provision will be added to empower the CE in Council to make subsidiary legislations to expand the categories of in-scope public officers under the offense. If certain public bodies are considered more likely to have access to state secrets and stringent regulations on the relevant officers is warranted, the CE in Council may expand the definition of public officers to include these persons by way of subsidiary legislation. Three, on declaration of prohibited places, a provision will be added to explicitly require the CE to make such declarations by order published in the Gazette. 4. On espionage, in particular the offense of colluding with an external force to publish to the public a statement of fact that is false or misleading. The narrowly defined element of misleading may create a legal loophole which undermines the efficacy of the provision. We therefore propose to delete the definition for the term misleading so that it will be understood in common sense. 5. In relation to the offense of sabotage endangering national security, to clearly spell out that public infrastructure covers public transport infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, and infrastructure for financial services situated in the Hong Kong SAR, we propose to include finance and logistics as examples of public services to show that the definition of public services is broad and that the examples provided are non-exhaustive. 6. The offense of external interference, to show that the relevant acts of such offense are clearly different from normal international exchanges conducted in line with the principles of sovereign equality and non-interference under international law, and to highlight the nature of endangering national security of the offense of external interference, we propose to rename the offense as external interference endangering national security, with the elements of the offense remaining unchanged. 7. On the offense of external interference endangering national security, there is an illustration about using improper means such as causing mental injury to or placing undue mental pressure on a person. To more accurately reflect the government's policy intent and to ensure consistency with the rest of the bill, we propose to revise this part into causing psychological harm to or placing undue psychological pressure on a person. 8. On the prohibition of participation in activities of prohibited organizations in order to protect some members of a dissolved prohibited organization, who may participate in the course of the winding up of the organization for legitimate reasons from committing an offense of acting as a member of the prohibited organization. As a result, we propose amendments to provide that doing an act with the prior written permission of the Secretary for Security does not constitute an offense. Under sections 360C and 360N of the Companies Winding Up and Miscellaneous Provisions Ordinance, Cap 32, a company which has become an unlawful society after its registration is cancelled by order made by the Chief Executive in Council may need to participate in the course of the winding up of the company, such as attending the general meeting. We propose an amendment to provide that a person shall not be held criminally liable to the offences related to unlawful societies under the Societies Ordinance and those related to prohibited organizations under the bill. 9. In order for the regulation to also apply to shadow organizations of prohibited organizations and for these not to give rise to any disputes over the applicability of the offences related to prohibited organizations, we propose an amendment to add new clauses to cover shadow organization of the prohibited organization, such that in reference to prohibited organizations, the offence also covers the shadow organization thereof. 10. A magistrate may adjourn the hearing of the application for an extension of the detention period for a reasonable period. In order to prescribe a reasonable period, we propose an amendment to provide for a period not exceeding 7 days, starting from the end of the first detention period, and thereafter for a further extension for a period of 7 days, or 14 days from the expiry of the first detention period, whichever the earlier. 11. In order to allow maximum flexibility for the Secretary for Security to take measures against absconders to prevent any circumvention from the relevant measures, we propose deleting the requirement to take measures against absconders 6 months after the expiry of the issue of warrant. This echoes the views of most of the members of the Bills Committee. 12. On the two measures targeting absconders, that is the prohibition against certain activities in connection with immovable property and prohibition in connection with joint ventures or partnerships with relevant absconders, in order not to cause any impact to third parties that have entered into any contract, agreement, or obligation, we move an amendment to add a clause to stipulate that a person is not to be regarded as having contravened the ordinance for doing such an act. (13) On the temporary removal of an absconder from the office of director, we propose an amendment for a person to exercise powers against an absconder under Hong Kong's laws and the Memorandum of Association, among other regulatory documents governing the company's formation and operation. This arrangement will ensure the continued application of the powers of the company and its shareholders exercisable against certain directors under the common law and documents such as the company's Memorandum of Association. 14. On cancelling the Hong Kong SAR passports of absconders, we propose an amendment to deal with possible applications from absconders for such passports. These applications will be regarded as invalid. 15. Having examined other ordinances, we propose an amendment empowering the CE in Council to make subsidiary legislations for the better carrying into effect of laws to keep our country safe. That is the national security law and its interpretation, and this bill after its passage. This means laying down further rules about these laws' operation to make sure we can effectively cope with unforeseeable scenarios. 16. To fulfill the constitutional duty under the May 28 decision and the national security law, and to better reflect the interpretation of Articles 14 and 47 of the NSL adopted by the MPCSC on the 30th of December 2022, we propose an amendment that when Hong Kong's laws confer any function on a person, this person must respect and implement the judgments and decisions of the Committee for Safeguarding National Security in making decisions while performing that function. 17. To ensure better delivery of national security education required under the NSL, we propose an amendment empowering the Chief Secretary for Administration, the Chairman of the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee, to give directions to any person the Chief Secretary considers appropriate for the public communication, guidance, supervision, and regulation of national security education. 18. Officers on a non-national security case also risk being doxxed because a party to the case also stands accused of national security charges in another case. Therefore, we propose an amendment extending the exemption of signing and certifying legal documents in national security cases to specified cases. This means covering non-national security cases where a party also stands accused of national security charges in another case. 19. Officers in non-national security cases also risk being doxxed. Such doxing may pose national security risks. Therefore, we propose an amendment adding a provision that specified court may, on application, take anonymity measures. This will let the court take measures such as making an order prohibiting the disclosure of identity to protect the identity of specified persons. We also propose an amendment setting out the offense of breaching such a court order. Anyone who knows that such an order has been made and discloses the information protected by the order commits an offense. Chairman, the Bills Committee has been briefed on the above amendments. Members stated their support for the amendments. I ask members to support the amendments. Thank you, Chairman.
Ms. Carmen Tan. Thank you, Chairman. I support the amendment moved by the Secretary for Security. Under the lead by the Chairman of the Bills Committee and the Deputy Chair, Mr. Martin Liu and Mr. Gary Chan, we asked almost every single page and clause. At the end of the scrutiny of the bill, it was expressed that targeted questions were asked, valuable opinions were given. I'd like to first speak on two amendments. First of all, on the scope of public officers, in clause 19 and 28 of the bill, it was shown in a table, but considering the hidden risks, severity of the national security risks, some public organization staff members, especially those working in the Airport Authority, SFC, Airport Authority, and Hong Kong Exchange, these organizations have a stake in the national security risks. Other staff members have a higher chance to access state secrets. There will be greater national security risks if the staff members are incited to mutiny. So I think the definition of public officers should be forward-looking. We recommend empowering the Chief Executive and Council by way of subsidiary legislation, expand the scope of the offense of incitement to disaffection, as well as the scope of public officers in order to more effectively implement national security law. I thank the administration for being receptive to our ideas and add clause 19A and clause 29A so that CE in council can, by way of gazettal notice or order, provide a certain type of persons as public officers. The Gazette notice or order is a piece of subsidiary legislation. It will be dealt with by way of negative vetting. The Legislative Council will have power to review the amendments. There are other amendments mentioned in Cap 472 in Art Development Council Ordinance. When public officers are charged with any offense in relation to endangering national security, they will be disqualified. The mechanism of subsidiary legislation will allay the concerns of the community. For example, in Stage 5, in relation to activities endangering national security, the administration thinks that there is no need to, by way of subsidiary legislation, expand the scope of public infrastructures. The administration clarifies the definition of public infrastructures. We need to, first of all, define whether the item being damaged or sabotaged is a public infrastructure. This proves the necessity of giving a clear definition. Hong Kong is an international shipping center. Public transport infrastructures, public financial infrastructures should be covered and protected by the law. So the committee recommends in the definition of public infrastructures, public transport infrastructures should be included. Financial services and logistics services should also be cited as an example. The relevant recommendation has been taken on board by the administration. These are my points about two of the amendments, and in a moment I will speak on other amendments. Thank you, Chairman. Next, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Chairman, in the committee stage amendment, we need to scrutinize the movements, the amendment moved by the administration. There are some concerns of Part 6 of the bill. Part 6 was some organizations endangering national security. It touches upon Clause 3 of Part 1. That is the definition of international organization. And Clause 52 of Part 6. That is about international organization. In the clause-by-clause scrutiny stage, these definitions seem to be neutral. They don't carry any negative connotations. I also pointed out, under general circumstances, societies in the community will not worry that their exchanges with other international organizations will endanger national security, as these activities will not be in breach of the ordinance. In his reply, the Secretary for Security said that he would further look at the clauses to identify any room for improvement. International organizations and external organizations are neutral. So, for example, external force is neutral. There is no negative connotation. In relation to external interference, I mentioned that the term is neutral. That is collaborating with external force. That is neutral. The administration moved an amendment amending Part 6 to external interference endangering national security and organization engaging in activities endangering national security. And Division 1 will be renamed as external interference endangering national security. This gives a clear definition and nature of the relevant acts. The acts refer to acts that will endanger national security and international organizations that will endanger national security. It does not cover all international organizations. This allays the concern of the public. I think this clarification is very important. I thank the administration for being receptive to our ideas and make relevant amendments. International network is a major component of the fact that Hong Kong will enhance our competitiveness edge. we should encourage such an act. It's important to have clear definition of the words in the bill. The administration should take more steps in order to step up publicity and public education of the bill. This will assuage public concerns, and this will also prevent the distortion of the bill and any smearing against the bill. I support the amendment. Thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Regina Ip. I speak in support of the amendments moved by the Secretary for Security. I also thank the DOJ and the Security Bureau officials for providing very prompt answers and detailed replies in our 7-day meetings. I'd like to point out in Clause 3 and Clause 6, these amendments were moved by me. In Clause 3, brackets 1, it is about international organization. That's about the definition of international organization. My habit is to read the English version first before I go on to the Chinese version. I already asked the DOJ whether the national security law is officially in Chinese or English. As the national security law promulgated by China is different, it only has a Chinese version, whereas the English version is an unofficial translation. The DOJ said that both Chinese and English versions are authentic, they are authoritative. The definition of international organizations was not ideal. It mentions that international organization has members of one or more, and that would cause misunderstanding. So I thank the administration for amending the definition to cover two countries, regions, or places. That is 2 or more of these. In Roman characters, Roman numerals A, 1 and 2, there were repetitions. Well, I think these textual amendments are very important. The national security law attracts worldwide attention, so we need to craft very carefully both the Chinese and the English versions. Both the Chinese and English text should be succinct, clear, so that members of the public as well as reporters from the West will also be able to understand these provisions clearly. In Clause 6, the meaning of external force, about the definition of external force. Brackets B in English is tautological, that is the repetition of something twice. It's impossible to state that an external force is the authority of a region or a place of an external place. I thank the administration for deleting of a region, so the text reads the authority of an external place. That is more succinct. I also made amendment in relation to Clause 21. That is about the textual meaning. In Clause 41, it's about the theft of espionage. In Clause 41, it's about espionage. What defines espionage? In Clause 41, subclause 2, brackets A, B, C, they list an examples of espionage. If someone spreads false information, that will also constitute espionage. But I need to emphasize all unlawful activities must carry mens rea. That is a criminal intent. So, criminal intent or recklessness or knowing, these are very important texts in the subclauses. In Clause 41 subclauses 4AB, there is bracket C explaining what declaration or material aspect would be misleading. There are Roman numerals 1, 2, 3 explaining what misleading material respect means. That is unclear, unintelligible, ambiguous, or untimely. These are unnecessary. I think we shouldn't need to nail it down so narrowly. So I recommended deleting brackets 3. I will speak on other amendments in a moment. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Chairman. The Safeguarding National Security Bills Committee finished the scrutiny in a couple of days. Members put forward some views. The administration was receptive to our ideas. I'd like to express some views. On Clause 47 of the bill, sabotage endangering national security, it involves acts that endanger or damage public infrastructures. The administration made amendments, that is to add financial infrastructures as well as logistics infrastructures. The reason why I suggested adding financial is that, for example, Hong Kong Exchange and the relevant system are included. I support this amendment. The financial industry is the lifeblood of the local economy. The suspension of business for one day will cause a loss of $100 billion. It is said that financial safety is an important element of the national security. It's crucial to ensure financial security. Starting from Clause 56, external interference has been renamed as external interference endangering national security. I fully support this. If someone colludes with external forces to affect the government's performance or function that will affect political independence as well as the governance of a country. But normal exchanges with other international organizations, including cultural and academic exchanges, these are obviously different. They are not the same. We need to further consolidate the status of Hong Kong as an international financial center. We also need to develop the headquarters economy in Hong Kong. We need to attract foreign enterprises and investments to come to Hong Kong. We need to conduct business and conduct academic exchanges with international communities. I'd like the administration to clarify that is ordinary exchanges or normal exchanges will not be considered external interference. That is what I asked the administration, and that is very important to Hong Kong. This can prevent people from taking words out of the context and spreading misleading and untruthful remarks. On Clause 63, brackets A, about the shadow organization of prohibited organization, the administration explained that is to amend Clause 59 when local organization is prohibited, it will dissolve. But whether there will be any office bearers or members that will continue to operate the prohibited organization, I expressed concern in the Bills Committee. These prohibited organizations on the surface are operated by office bearers, including office bearers, president, secretary, and so on. However, there are also people operating or controlling these organizations behind the scene. These office bearers may not have an official title. They may make orders through somebody else or make external communication with somebody else. These are not unheard of. If these organizations on the surface are dissolved, but they re-emerge in another manner, is it possible to cover all these scenarios in the bill? The administration took on board my recommendation and add Clause 63, brackets A, specifying the prohibited organization should cover the shadow organization of the prohibited organization, so that the offense in relation to a prohibited organization is also applicable to the shadow organization of the prohibited organization. I support it. So the shadow organization will also be subject to the regulation and will not be able to operate. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Martin Liu. Thank you, Chairman. The administration took on board many amendments, many recommendations made by committee members. These further enhance the bill. The Bills Committee clearly explains the reasons for the relevant amendments. As the administration said, the Bills Committee is kind of preventive legislation. It needs to carry enough deterrence against lawbreakers that will endanger national security, especially when it comes to the absconders that endanger national security. These absconders further promote Hong Kong independence and collude with external force to endanger national security. I support the bill empowering the Secretary for Security to take measures against absconders, including providing funds or handling funds in relation to activities in respect of immovable property, as well as joint ventures and enterprises, the cancellation or revocation of professional qualifications, as well as the cancellation of passports. In terms of immovable property, I asked scenario questions in the Bills Committee. If tenants sign a 3-year tenure of residential properties, if after 3 years the property owner is an absconder, does the tenant need to leave the residential property right away in order not to break the law? I also asked relevant questions in relation to contracts and agreements. That is, after the party to the contract or agreement becomes an absconder. I asked about the future disputes. According to Clause 94, the Secretary for Security can make approval. But sometimes the innocent third parties may have already entered into agreement or contract with the absconder before the absconder becomes an absconder. In relation to Clause 83 about immovable property and Clause 90 about the joint venture and joint enterprises, there are relevant amendments. Through adding Clause 88(6), well, that is when the activities take place before the absconder becomes an absconder, that person will not, by reason only of that act, be found to be breaking the law. Under Clause 86(6), if a person does an act mentioned in subsection 2 under a contract, agreement, or obligation that arose before the date on which the relevant absconder became a relevant absconder, the person is not to be regarded as having contravened that subsection by reason only of that act. These two amendments further improve the quality of the text. This allays the concerns of the public in relation to the property owner becomes an absconder after the signing of a contract or agreement. This can also enhance the transparency of contracts, and this helps attract enterprises. I so submit. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chen Siu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. I speak